This wedding is a joke, my sister screamed, interrupting our vows. You are marrying a waiter, Sophia. How pathetic. But as she stormed out, my soon-to-be husband smiled and whispered, Should we tell her who I really am? I shook my head. The surprise would come later. I am Sophia, 32 years old, and I stood at the altar trembling not with joy, but with a rage so hot it threatened to burn the entire vineyard down. Just moments before the air in Napa Valley had been perfect. The golden hour sun was dipping behind the rolling hills, casting a warm glow over the small gathering of 30 close friends. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, a simple, elegant ceremony celebrating my love for Liam. But peace was a luxury my family never allowed me to afford. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had a family member try to destroy your happiness just because they were miserable in their own lives. The silence of the ceremony was shattered by the roar of an engine. Not just any engine, but the aggressive growl of a red Ferrari tearing up the gravel driveway, kicking up dust onto the white floral arrangements. Every head turned. My heart sank. I knew that car. I knew the driver. And I knew my quiet, intimate wedding was over. The car door opened, and out stepped my younger sister, Jasmine. She was not wearing guest attire. She was wearing a floor-length white gown covered in crystals that caught the sunlight blindingly. It was a dress that cost more than my entire wedding budget, and she looked stunning in the most malicious way possible. Behind her emerged her husband, Brad, adjusting his sunglasses with a smirk that made my skin crawl. They were late, they were loud, and they were here to make a scene. Jasmine did not take a seat. She strutted down the center aisle, her heels clicking loudly on the stone path. The pastor paused mid-sentence, looking confused. "Excuse me, miss, we are in the middle of vows," the pastor said gently. Jasmine ignored him completely. She walked right up to the altar, stepping onto the raised platform as if she were the bride. She snatched the microphone from the pastor's hand. Feedback screeched through the speakers, making everyone wince, but Jasmine didn't care. She turned to the guests, flashing her perfect veneer smile. "Stop everything," she announced, her voice booming across the vineyard. "I cannot let this charade continue. I am doing this because I love you, Sophia. I am saving you from yourself." I froze my bouquet, shaking in my hands. "Jasmine, what are you doing? Sit down or leave," I hissed. She laughed, a cruel, tinkling sound that I had heard my entire childhood whenever she mocked my drawings or stole my diary. "I am being a good sister," she said, pointing a manicured finger at Liam. "Look at him, Sophia. Really look at him. You are marrying a nobody, a man who pours coffee for a living. Look at his suit. It is ill-fitting. It is probably a rental from a discount store." Liam stood beside me, perfectly still. He was wearing a simple navy suit, but what Jasmine failed to notice was the quality of the fabric or the way he carried himself with a quiet dignity that no amount of money could buy. She only saw what she wanted to see. A man who lived simply. A man who did not flash a Rolex or drive a sports car. To her, that meant he was trash. "Mom and Dad are sitting right there," she continued, gesturing to the front row where my parents sat. "Look at Mom. She is humiliated. You are dragging the family name through the mud by marrying a servant." I looked at my mother, expecting her to stand up and defend me, expecting her to tell Jasmine to stop this madness. Instead, my mother Joyce let out a dramatic sob. She pressed a lace handkerchief to her eyes and leaned heavily against my father. Oh, the shame, she wailed loudly enough for everyone to hear. I tried to tell her not to marry beneath her station, but she wouldn't listen. My father Marcus just looked down at his shoes, refusing to meet my eyes. My heart shattered. Even on my wedding day, I was the disappointment. Jasmine was the hero, saving the family reputation. Then Brad stepped up. He didn't take the microphone. He didn't need to. His voice was loud and arrogant, carrying the weight of a man who thought his bank account gave him the right to belittle anyone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick wad of cash. He walked up to Liam, invading his personal space. Brad was shorter than Liam, But he puffed out his chest, trying to look imposing. "Hey, buddy," Brad said, sneering. "We know you are looking for a payday, marrying into this family for the money, right? Well, let me save you the trouble." Brad peeled off a few bills, crumpled them up, and threw them at Liam. The money hit Liam's chest and fluttered to the ground, landing on his polished shoes. "Here is a tip," Brad laughed. "Consider it payment for acting like a groom for an hour. Now take it and get out of here. Go buy yourself a bus ticket back to whatever basement you crawled out of." The disrespect was physical. I felt it like a slap. My entire body tensed. I dropped my bouquet and raised my hand, ready to slap Jasmine, ready to scream at Brad, ready to tear down the entire facade of this toxic family. But before I could move, a warm hand enclosed my wrist. It was Liam. I looked up at him, expecting to see anger, expecting to see humiliation. But his face was calm. His eyes were clear and steady. He didn't look down at the money on the ground. He didn't look at Brad's sneering face. He looked at me. His grip on my wrist was firm, but gentle, grounding me. "Don't," he whispered. His voice was low, meant only for me. "They are ruining everything." I choked out tears, finally spilling over. "They are just playing their roles," Liam said softly, a small, dangerous smile touching the corners of his lips. "They want a show, Sophia. Let them have it. We will drop the curtain later." He turned to the pastor, who looked terrified. "We are finished here," Liam said, his voice calm but commanding. He took my hand, interlacing his fingers with mine. He didn't pick up the money. He stepped right over it, as if it were dirt. He didn't look at my wailing mother or my cowarding father. He led me down the aisle, past my stunned guests, past a gloating Jasmine who was already pulling out her phone to livestream the aftermath. Running away, Jasmine shouted after us. "That is right, run away, you pathetic loser. Call me when you need a divorce lawyer." I wanted to turn back. I wanted to scream that Liam owned the entire resort chain they were planning to vacation at next week. I wanted to scream that the suit he was wearing cost more than her dress. But I trusted Liam. As we walked toward his vintage truck, leaving the chaos behind, I realized that the wedding was ruined, but the marriage was just beginning. And the revenge Liam had planned was going to be far sweeter than any cake we could have cut that day. The engine of Liam's truck hummed beneath us, a steady vibration that usually calmed my nerves, but today my hands were shaking so badly I could barely unclench them from my lap. We had been driving for 20 minutes in silence, leaving the dust of the vineyard and the wreckage of my wedding behind us. I kept waiting for my phone to ring. I knew my family. They never let the last word go spoken by someone else. They needed to twist the knife until they felt like the victims. When the phone finally buzzed against the center console, the name on the screen made my stomach turn over. Mother. I stared at it, the glowing letters blurring through my unshed tears. I wanted to throw the device out the window and watch it shatter on the highway asphalt. I wanted to drive until we hit the ocean and then keep going, but I couldn't. Because ignoring Joyce meant consequences not for me, but for the one person I actually loved in that family. Liam glanced at the screen, his eyes narrowing slightly, but he didn't tell me what to do. He kept one hand on the steering wheel and reached over with the other, covering my trembling hand with his warm, steady palm. "Answer it," he said softly. "Put it on speaker. I want to hear what excuse they have invented for themselves." I took a deep breath, swiped the green icon, and braced myself for the impact. "Hello, Mother," I said, my voice sounding far more fragile than I wanted it to. I expected screaming. I expected the shrill hysteria she usually reserved for when the caterer got her order wrong. But what I got was worse. I got her cold, disappointed tone, the one she used to make me feel small since I was 5 years old. "Sophia, you have absolutely outdone yourself this time." The audacity took the air out of my lungs. "I outdone myself," I repeated. Mother Jasmine interrupted my vows. She marched up to the altar in a wedding dress. "Brad threw money at my husband. And whose fault is that really, Sophia?" My mother cut in sharp as a razor. "You provoked them. You knew how sensitive Jasmine is about status. You knew how hard Brad has worked to elevate this family's image. And yet, you insisted on parading that man around in a suit that looked like it was stitched together from curtains. You embarrassed us, Sophia. You made us look cheap. I looked at Liam. He wasn't looking at the road anymore. He was looking at the phone with an expression I had never seen on him before. It wasn't anger. It was a cold, calculating curiosity, like a scientist observing a dangerous bacteria under a microscope. "We are not doing this," I said, my anger finally sparking to life. "I am not going to apologize for getting married. If that is why you called, you can hang up." "Do not you dare hang up on me," my mother snapped, her voice rising an octave. "We are not finished. Because of your little stunt today, Brad is furious. He is talking about cutting ties with us financially. Do you know what that means? It means no more country club memberships. It means no more vacations. It means the reputation we built in this town is gone." I almost laughed. It was always about the image, always about the money Brad dangled over their heads like a carrot. "That sounds like a you problem, Mother," I said, reaching to end the call. "Grandma Rose," she said. 2 words. That was all it took to freeze my finger over the red button. "What about Grandma?" I whispered. My grandmother Rose was 85 years old. She had dementia. She lived in the Victorian house my grandfather had built, the house I grew up in, the only place where I had ever felt safe. My parents legally owned the deed, but I paid the property taxes. I paid for the caregivers. I paid for the maintenance. But I didn't own the leverage. Well, my mother sighed dramatically, the sound of someone burdened by an incompetent child. "Brad was going to pay for the new roof the house needs next month. But now he is refusing. And honestly, your father and I have been thinking. That house is such a money pit. The land value in that neighborhood has skyrocketed. Maybe it is time we sell it. Put Rose in a state facility. It would be so much cheaper." The blood drained from my face. A state facility. For a woman who got confused if her teacup was the wrong color. It would kill her. Moving her from her home would kill her. And my mother knew it. She was holding my grandmother's life hostage. "You cannot do that," I choked out. "You promised she could stay there until the end. I pay for everything inside that house." "But you don't own the walls, Sophia," my mother reminded me, her voice dripping with triumph. "Unless, of course, we can find a way to smooth things over. Unless we can make Brad and Jasmine forgive you." I closed my eyes. I knew what was coming. I knew there was a price tag on my grandmother's safety. "What do you want?" I asked, defeated. "They are going on their honeymoon next week," my mother said, her tone brightening instantly. "It is a family moon, actually. Brad is so generous he rented out the entire villa wing at the Aurora Resort and Spa. You know the place, right? 6 stars, exclusive, the kind of place you could never afford to step foot in." "I know it," I said, dull. "Good. Well, Jasmine is distraught. Her nerves are shot after the trauma you caused her today. She needs support. She needs someone to handle the logistics, make sure her schedule is perfect, carry her bags, handle the reservations. She needs a personal assistant." "You want me to be her assistant?" I asked, disbelief coloring my tone. "On her honeymoon. I want you to make it right," my mother corrected. "You will come to Aurora. You will serve your sister. You will do whatever she asks, and you will do it with a smile. You will apologize publicly in front of Brad's business partners who will be there. If you do this, and if Jasmine is happy by the end of the week, then we will sign the deed of Grandma's house over to you. We will wash our hands of it. And if I say no, then I call the real estate agent on Monday morning," my mother said coldly. "It is your choice, Sophia. Pride or Grandma. You have 1 hour to decide." The line went dead. I sat there staring at the dashboard, the silence of the truck suffocating me. I felt sick, physically ill. They wanted to turn me into a servant. They wanted to strip away the last of my dignity in exchange for the only home I had left. "I can't do it," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I can't go there, Liam. I can't watch them humiliate me for a week at a place like Aurora. It is too much. I will figure something else out. I will get a lawyer." Liam didn't say anything at first. He signaled and pulled the truck over to the shoulder of the highway. The gravel crunched beneath the tires as we came to a stop. He unbuckled his seatbelt and turned to face me fully. His eyes were intense, searching mine. He reached out and wiped a tear from my cheek, his thumb rough but gentle. "Sophia, listen to me," he said, his voice steady and low. "They are monsters, Liam," I sobbed. "They are going to sell the house." "No, they are not," he said. "And you are going to go to that resort." I pulled back, looking at him in shock. "You want me to go? You heard her. She wants me to carry Jasmine's bags. She wants me to be a slave." "I want you to get that deed," Liam said firmly. "That house belongs to you. It belongs to Rose. We need to secure it. But more importantly, Sophia, we need to expose them." "Expose them?" How, I asked, wiping my eyes. "Brad is rich. He is powerful. He is going to be surrounded by his Wall Street friends. I will just be the poor sister in the corner." Liam smiled then. It wasn't his usual warm, goofy smile. It was the smile of a wolf who just realized the sheep have wandered into his den. It was sharp, dangerous, and full of secrets. "Aurora Resort and Spa," he said, testing the name on his tongue. "Yeah, it is one of the most expensive places in the country," I sniffed. "Brad talks about it constantly. He says he is trying to merge his company with them." Liam chuckled, a dark sound deep in his chest. "Is that what he says?" He looked out the windshield at the setting sun, his fingers drumming rhythmically on the steering wheel. "Baby," he said, turning back to me, "you should definitely go. In fact, I will come with you. I will carry your bags while you carry hers." "Why would you do that?" I asked, confused. "Why would you want to walk into that lion's den?" "Because," Liam whispered, leaning in close to kiss my forehead. "Aurora is a very interesting place. The staff there are very particular about loyalty. And the owner." He paused, his eyes twinkling with a mischief I didn't understand yet. "What about the owner?" I asked. "Let us just say I know him," Liam said. "I know him better than anyone. And I think he would be very interested to meet a man like Brad." He started the truck back up, the engine roaring to life. "Pack your bags, Sophia," he said, pulling back onto the highway. "We are going on a honeymoon. It might not be the one we planned, but I promise you, it is going to be one neither of them will ever forget." I looked at my husband in his simple t-shirt and jeans, driving a 10-year-old truck, and for the first time, I wondered if I really knew who I had married. But as we drove toward the horizon, toward the impending nightmare at the Aurora Resort, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. My mother thought she was sending me to a slaughterhouse. She didn't realize she was sending me in with the butcher. The iron gates of the Aurora Resort and Spa towered over us like the entrance to a fortress built for gods, not men. As our humble truck pulled into the circular driveway behind Brad's rented limousine, the contrast was immediate and painful. The resort was a masterpiece of modern architecture and natural beauty, with cascading waterfalls and walls of glass that reflected the Napa Valley sunset. It smelled of money. Not the dirty kind of money Brad threw around, but old, quiet wealth. The air was scented with white tea and cedar, and the sound of splashing water drowned out the engine of our old vehicle. I hesitated to open the door. My hands were sweating. This was the lion's den my mother had thrown me into, and I felt like I was wearing a target on my back. Liam turned off the ignition and looked at me. His face was unreadable calm and composed in a way that should have terrified me given the circumstances. He squeezed my hand, once a silent promise that he was with me, and then he stepped out into the crisp evening air. Jasmine was already out of the limousine. She stood on the cobblestones adjusting her oversized designer sunglasses even though the sun had nearly set. She looked every inch the pampered princess in her silk resort wear, waiting for the world to serve her. Brad was beside her, barking orders at the bellhops who were scrambling to unload their mountain of luggage. When Jasmine saw me climbing out of the truck, her lip curled in disgust. "Sophia," finally she sighed, looking at her diamond-encrusted watch. "We have been waiting for 2 minutes. Do not just stand there gawking at the architecture. We have a schedule." I walked toward them, my head held high, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. I am here, Jasmine. What do you need? I need you to be useful, she snapped, pointing a manicured finger at the trunk of the limousine. The bellhops are busy with Brad's golf clubs. You take my personal bags, there are 5 of them. And be careful with the Louis Vuitton set. Scratches are not in the budget this year, unlike whatever you are wearing. I looked at the pile of luggage, 5 heavy hard-shell cases. I looked at the bellhops who were standing idly by waiting for instructions. They could have easily taken them. This was not about logistics. This was about dominance. She wanted me to carry her burden physically and metaphorically in front of the staff. I reached for the handle of the largest bag, the leather cool and smooth under my fingers. It was heavy, filled with shoes and dresses she would probably never wear. As I struggled to lift it onto the pavement, I felt a shadow fall over me. "Leave it," Liam said, his voice low and dangerous. I looked up. Liam was standing there, his eyes locked on the bellhop closest to us. The young man froze, sensing the authority radiating from my husband. But before the bellhop could move, Brad stepped in between them. Brad laughed, a harsh, barking sound that grated on my nerves. He adjusted his silk tie and looked Liam up and down with open disdain. His eyes lingered on Liam's navy blue t-shirt. It was a simple garment to the untrained eye, but I knew the truth. It was a Brunello Cucinelli shirt made of the finest Sea Island cotton worth $500. It was soft, breathable, and understated. But to a man like Brad, who only understood wealth if it was plastered with logos and neon signs, it looked like a rag from a discount bin. "Hey, buddy," Brad sneered, stepping into Liam's personal space. "We do not want you confusing the guests. The service entrance is around the back near the loading dock. We do not want you cluttering up the VIP lobby with that thrift store aesthetic." Liam didn't blink. He didn't step back. He simply looked at Brad with a mild amusement, as if watching a toddler throw a tantrum in a supermarket. "I think the front door will work just fine," Liam said, his voice even. Brad scoffed, shaking his head. "You just do not get it, do you? This is the Aurora. They have standards here. Standards that do not include waiters trying to act like guests. But fine, carry the bags inside, and maybe I will ask the manager to let you use the staff restroom before you leave." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell Brad that he was speaking to a man who could buy and sell him 10 times over. But Liam caught my eye and gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. He reached down and picked up 2 of the heaviest bags, effortlessly hoisting them as if they weighed nothing. "After you," he said to me, his tone gentle. We walked into the lobby, and my breath caught in my throat. The space was cavernous with ceilings that soared 50 feet high. A massive crystal chandelier suspended from the center, looking like a frozen explosion of light. The floor was polished marble that reflected our silhouettes as we walked. It was intimidating. It was designed to make you feel small. But then the atmosphere shifted. A man in an impeccable charcoal suit was walking toward us across the lobby. He moved with purposeful strides, his eyes scanning the room with the sharpness of a hawk. I recognized him immediately from the business magazines I archived at the library. It was Arthur Sterling, the legendary general manager of the Aurora Resort. He was known for being terrifyingly efficient and absolutely ruthless about privacy. Brad immediately straightened his posture, puffing out his chest like a peacock. He whispered loudly to Jasmine, "Watch this, babe. That is Sterling. He knows who I am. He is coming to welcome the future partner of Aurora personally." Brad stepped forward, separating himself from us. He extended his hand, a wide, sycophantic smile plastered on his face, ready to be recognized as the important financier he believed he was. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." Brad boomed, his voice echoing slightly. "It is a pleasure to finally." Mr. Sterling walked right past him. He didn't even slow down. He didn't even look at Brad's extended hand. It was as if Brad was invisible, a ghost haunting the lobby. Mr. Sterling walked straight toward Liam. My heart stopped. This was it. The cover was blown. Mr. Sterling stopped 3 feet in front of Liam. His eyes widened slightly, and his mouth opened, ready to form the words, "Good evening, Mr. Chairman." I saw the recognition, the respect, the absolute deference in his body language. He began to bow his head, but Liam barely moved. He shifted the bags in his hands slightly and looked Mr. Sterling dead in the eye. It was a micro-movement, a slight narrowing of the eyes, and a almost imperceptible shake of the head. A silent command. Do not. Mr. Sterling froze. He was a professional. He processed the signal instantly. He saw the bags in Liam's hands. He saw the t-shirt. He saw the arrogant man standing behind him. He blinked once, resetting his expression from reverence to professional neutrality. He cleared his throat and pivoted smoothly, turning back to Brad, who was still standing there with his hand out, looking confused. "Mr. Brad Miller, I presume?" Mr. Sterling said, his voice cool and detached. Brad blinked, recovering quickly. Yes, that is me. I thought you missed me there for a second." "We have been expecting you," Mr. Sterling said, offering no apology. "Your suite is ready, and for your guests." He gestured vaguely toward me and Liam, his eyes carefully avoiding Liam's gaze, as if looking directly at the sun would burn him. "My sister is the help," Jasmine interjected, stepping forward and linking her arm through Brad's. "She is here to assist me. And him, well, he is just carrying the heavy things." "Do you have quarters for them? We do not want them on the VIP floor, obviously." Mr. Sterling paused. I saw a muscle in his jaw twitch. I saw his knuckles turn white as he clasped his hands behind his back. He was struggling to maintain his composure while listening to this woman insult the owner of the building. "Of course, madam," Mr. Sterling said, his voice tight. "We have a room available on the lower level, near the facilities." "Perfect," Jasmine beamed. "Give her the key, and make sure it is far away from the presidential suite. We need our privacy." Mr. Sterling snapped his fingers, and a front desk agent rushed over, handing a single plain plastic key card to Jasmine. She took it and dropped it into my hand like she was tipping a valet. "Here is the key to your assistant quarters, Sophia," she said. "It is on the lower level near the laundry facilities. Try not to make too much noise when you come up to bring me my morning coffee at 7 sharp. And do not be late." She turned on her heel, her dress swishing around her ankles, and marched toward the golden elevators with Brad trailing behind her, looking triumphant. I stood there holding the plastic key card, feeling the marble floor cold beneath my feet. I looked at the number written on it in marker B14. Basement level. Liam set the bags down. He looked at Mr. Sterling, who was still hovering nearby, looking pale. Liam gave him a small nod, dismissing him. Mr. Sterling exhaled a breath he seemed to have been holding for 5 minutes and retreated into his office. "Go to the room," Sophia, Liam said softly. "It will be okay." "Where are you going?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "You are not staying with me?" "I have to take care of something," he whispered, leaning in to kiss my forehead. His lips were warm, but his eyes were cold, hard flint. "I have some business to attend to, some inventory to check." "But Liam," I started to protest. "Trust me," he said, pulling away. "Lock the door, get some sleep. Tomorrow the real show begins." I watched him walk away, not toward the elevators and not toward the exit. He walked toward a heavy oak door marked "Private Staff Only." He swiped a card I didn't know he had and disappeared into the shadows of the resort, leaving me alone in the middle of the gold and marble with nothing but a plastic key card and a heart full of fear. The mid-afternoon sun beat down on the exclusive infinity pool deck of the Aurora Resort, but the heat I felt had nothing to do with the weather. It was the scorching burn of humiliation that radiated from my cheeks down to my toes. While the other guests lounged in designer swimwear sipping chilled cocktails, I was standing under the blazing sun wearing a heavy gray polyester tunic that Jasmine had forced the housekeeping manager to find for me. She claimed it was to help me blend in, but we both knew the truth. It was a costume designed to strip away my identity and label me as beneath her. Jasmine lay sprawled on a plush white cabana bed, looking like a queen holding court. She had her phone propped up on a ring light she had made me carry all the way from the suite, and she was live streaming to her 50,000 followers. "Hey guys, so I just wanted to be real with you for a second," Jasmine said into the camera, her voice dropping to a fake whisper that was meant to sound sympathetic. My sister Sophia is actually here with us on this trip. She is going through a really, really rough patch right now. No money, no job prospects, and she just got out of a toxic relationship. So we brought her along to help out and give her some purpose. I stood 3 feet away, clenching my fists at my sides. Toxic relationship. She was talking about Liam. She was rewriting my life in real time for an audience of strangers. Sophia Jasmine snapped her fingers without looking away from the screen. My shoulders are getting burned. Sunscreen. Now. I hesitated. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to throw the bottle of SPF 50 into the pool and walk away. But then I remembered Grandma Rose. I remembered the threat of the state facility. I remembered the deed to the house. I took a breath, swallowed my pride, and stepped forward. I squeezed the cold lotion onto my hands and began to apply it to her shoulders. Jasmine flinched dramatically. "Ouch, Sophia, you are so rough," she complained to her phone. "See what I mean, guys? It is so hard to help family when they are this bitter. But I am trying. Hashtag sisterhood, hashtag charity." Around us, a group of men burst into loud, raucous laughter. It was Brad and his entourage. 5 guys who looked exactly like him, slicked back hair, expensive sunglasses, and bodies soft from desk jobs, but tanned from expensive vacations. They were sitting in the shallow end of the pool holding beers and watching me with amusement. "Is that the genius sister you told us about, Brad?" one of them asked, taking a swig of his drink. "The one who works in a library or something." "Yeah, that is her," Brad laughed, floating on a pool noodle like a king on a throne. "Turns out reading books does not pay the bills. Now she is basically Jasmine's personal servant." "Hey, Sophia, get me another beer while you are up." I ignored him, focusing on rubbing the lotion into Jasmine's back until it disappeared. I felt like an object, a prop in their play of wealth and power. "She is actually kind of cute in a tragic way," another friend sneered. "Maybe if she ditched the waiter husband, she could find a real job. Or maybe we could hire her to clean our condos in the city." The laughter that followed was like a physical blow. I finished with Jasmine and stepped back, wiping my greasy hands on the rough fabric of the tunic. I felt dizzy. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, and the heat was overwhelming. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me, blocking the harsh sun. I looked up, expecting another demand from Jasmine. Instead, I saw Liam. He looked completely out of place and yet entirely at home. He was wearing swim trunks and a linen shirt, unbuttoned at the top, looking effortlessly handsome. But what caught my eye was what he was holding. A tall glass of fresh squeezed orange juice with ice sweating down the sides. "Drink this," he said, his voice cutting through the noise of the pool deck. "You look dehydrated." I reached for the glass, my hand trembling. "Thank you," I whispered. But before my fingers could graze the cold glass, a hand lashed out from the side. Smack! The glass flew out of Liam's hand, shattering against the expensive stone tiles of the pool deck. Orange juice splashed over my shoes and onto the hem of Liam's linen pants. I gasped, jumping back. Brad was standing there, dripping wet, his face twisted in anger. "What do you think you are doing?" Brad shouted, causing the entire pool area to go silent. Guests lowered their sunglasses. The music seemed to stop. "I am giving my wife a drink," Liam said, his voice dangerously calm. "You are cluttering up my VIP area," Brad spat, stepping closer to Liam. "I told you. Staff stays in the background. You do not get to come here and act like a guest, just because I was generous enough to let you sleep in the basement." He pointed at the shattered glass and the sticky puddle of juice. "Look at this mess. You are clumsy just like your wife. Clean it up." I knelt down instinctively, reaching for the glass shards, but Liam grabbed my arm, pulling me back up. "Do not touch it, Sophia," he said. "Oh, so you are too good to clean now?" Brad laughed, looking back at his friends for validation. "Fine. If you are not going to clean, then make yourself useful." "My glass is empty." Brad thrust his empty beer bottle toward Liam. "Go to the bar. Get me a vodka martini. Shaken, not stirred. And make it quick, waiter boy. Let us see if you have any actual skills. I watched Liam's jaw tighten. I saw the flash of something terrifying in his eyes. For a second, I thought he was going to hit Brad. I thought he was going to destroy him right there in front of everyone. But then the tension in Liam's shoulders released. He smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. You want me to go to the bar? Liam asked. Yeah, I want you to go to the bar, Brad mocked. Go do what you were born to do. Serve your betters. Liam nodded slowly. All right, Brad. I will go to the bar. Liam turned and walked toward the poolside bar. It was a sleek circular structure manned by a nervous-looking bartender named David. I had seen David earlier getting yelled at by Jasmine for putting too much ice in her water. Brad laughed loudly, high-fiving his friends. See that? You have to put these people in their place. He is probably glad I am giving him something to do. I watched anxiously as Liam approached the bar, but he didn't walk around to the service side. He walked right through the gate meant only for employees. David the bartender stepped forward, his eyes wide. Sir, you cannot come back here. This is for staff only. I could not hear what Liam whispered to him, but I saw the effect. David's face went pale. He took a step back, his hands shaking. Liam didn't reach for a shaker or a vodka bottle. Instead, he reached under the counter and pulled out the inventory logbook. Brad was too busy bragging to his friends to notice. He is probably struggling to find the olives. Brad chuckled. I watched as Liam opened the heavy leather-bound book. He ran his finger down the columns. He picked up a bottle of premium tequila, held it up to the light, inspected the seal, and then looked at the logbook again. He said something to David, and David nodded vigorously, looking like he was about to faint. Liam wasn't making a drink. He was auditing the stock. He was checking for theft. He was doing exactly what an owner would do if he suspected his management was lax. From where I stood, I could see the shift in the atmosphere behind the bar. The barback stopped washing glasses. The manager came running out from the back room looking terrified. They were all circling Liam, answering his quiet questions with frantic nods. But to Brad and Jasmine, it just looked like incompetence. What is taking so long? Brad yelled over his shoulder. I am thirsty over here. Liam looked up from the ledger. He locked eyes with Brad across the pool deck. He didn't shout. He just held Brad's gaze for a second longer than was comfortable before closing the book with a decisive snap. He said one last thing to the manager, who immediately picked up a phone and started dialing frantically. Then Liam walked back toward us, empty-handed. Where is my drink? Brad demanded, standing up. They are out of vodka, Liam said simply, his face a mask of innocence. Out of vodka, Brad sputtered. This is a 6-star resort. How can they be out of vodka? Bad management, I guess? Liam shrugged, standing next to me. Brad opened his mouth to scream, but suddenly his phone chimed. It was a special alert tone he had set for his most important business notifications. He frowned and pulled his phone out of his waterproof case. As he read the message, his face transformed. The anger vanished, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated greed. His eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. Guys, shut up! Brad hissed at his friends, waving his hand frantically. Shut up, shut up! You are not going to believe this. What is it? Jasmine asked, looking up from her phone for the first time. My contact on the board just texted me. Brad whispered, his voice trembling with excitement. He says the chairman is here. Who? Jasmine asked, confused. The chairman, Brad hissed. The owner of Aurora Holdings, the ghost. Nobody has seen his face in 5 years, but he is here. On this property. Right now. He looked around the pool deck, his eyes scanning every face desperately. He must be doing a secret inspection, Brad said, pacing back and forth. Oh my God, this is it. If I can find him, if I can just get 5 minutes with him, I can close the merger deal. I will be a partner. I will be rich. I looked at Liam. He was standing perfectly still, watching Brad's frantic excitement with a look of bored detachment. He could be anyone, Brad said, pointing at an old man in the corner. Is that him? No, too short. What about that guy in the suit? He turned to Liam, not seeing him as a person, but just a body to use. "Hey you," Brad snapped. "You were just at the bar. Did you hear anything? Did the staff say anything about a VIP guest?" Liam looked down at Brad. A small amusement danced in his eyes. "Actually," Liam said slowly, "I did hear the manager say something about the chairman." Brad froze. "What? What did he say? Where is he?" Liam pointed vaguely toward the main hotel tower. "I think he said he was heading to the penthouse. Something about preparing for a very important meeting tomorrow." "The penthouse," Brad gasped. "Of course." He grabbed Jasmine's hand, pulling her off the cabana bed. "Get up, Jasmine. We are going to the lobby. We are going to stake out the elevators. I am not missing this chance." "But my tan," Jasmine whined. "Forget the tan," Brad yelled, dragging her away. "We are talking about billions, Jasmine. Billions." He turned back to his friends. "You guys stay here. If you see anyone who looks like a billionaire, text me immediately." And then he looked at me and Liam one last time. "And you too," Brad sneered. "Clean up this glass, and then get out of my sight. I have real business to attend to." He ran off toward the hotel, chasing a ghost that was standing right behind him. I watched them go, the adrenaline slowly fading from my system, leaving me tired and shaky. I looked at Liam. "You are enjoying this, aren't you?" I whispered. Liam looked at the spot where Brad had been standing. He reached down and picked up a large shard of glass, carefully placing it on a tray a passing waiter had hurriedly brought over. The waiter looked at Liam with awe, whispering, "Thank you, sir. I will handle the rest." Liam turned to me and took my hand, his grip warm and solid. "He wants a meeting with the chairman," Liam said softly, leading me away from the pool. "I think he is going to get one. Tomorrow morning." "And Sophia." He stopped and looked deep into my eyes. "Wear the blue dress I packed for you, the one you wore on our first date. I want you to look like the queen you are when we end him." The restaurant was called the Obsidian, and it was the crown jewel of the Aurora Resort dining experience. It was a place where a single appetizer cost more than my weekly grocery budget, and the walls were lined with velvet that absorbed the hushed whispers of billionaires and celebrities. We were seated at the best table in the house, a circular booth overlooking the cascading waterfalls that were illuminated by underwater lights. Or rather, my parents Jasmine and Brad were seated at the booth. Liam and I were given two folding chairs at the very edge of the table, placed awkwardly in the path of the waiters, as if we were an afterthought that had been tacked onto the reservation at the last minute. I sat there picking at my salad because Jasmine had insisted that ordering an entree for me would be a waste of money, since I probably would not appreciate the complexity of Wagyu beef anyway. My stomach growled, but I ignored it, focusing instead on the performance happening in front of me. Brad was in his element. He had ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu, a vintage Cabernet that the sommelier had presented with white gloves. Brad swirled the wine in his glass, sniffing it loudly and making a show of tasting it, even though I knew his palate could not distinguish between this bottle and box wine from a gas station. "You know, Marcus," Brad said, addressing my father, who was looking at him with pathetic adoration, "this is the kind of lifestyle Sophia could have had if she had just listened to us. Success is a choice. Poverty is also a choice." My father nodded vigorously, cutting into his steak. "You are absolutely right, Brad. We are just so grateful you brought us here. This merger you are working on sounds historic." "Historic does not even begin to cover it," Brad boasted, leaning back and spreading his arms wide, taking up as much space as possible. "The Aurora Group is the biggest hospitality player in the hemisphere, but they are stagnant. They need new blood. They need my financial genius to take them to the next level." "I have been in talks with the board for months." I glanced at Liam. He was cutting his chicken with precise surgical movements, his face completely blank. But under the table, his leg was pressed against mine, warm and solid. "And what about the chairman?" Liam asked quietly, without looking up. The table went silent. It was the first time Liam had spoken since we sat down. Brad blinked as if the furniture had suddenly started talking. "Excuse me," the chairman Liam repeated, looking up now, his dark eyes boring into Brad. "The ghost. I read that he is notoriously protective of his brand. Do you really think he will agree to a merger with a mid-tier hedge fund that specializes in high-risk short-term gains?" Brad turned a shade of purple that matched the wine in his glass. Jasmine gasped, dropping her fork. "Mid-tier," Brad sputtered. "How dare you? My fund manages hundreds of millions of dollars. And as for the chairman, we are practically best friends. We have been emailing back and forth all week. He loves my vision. He told me that I remind him of himself when he was younger." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing. The idea of the elegant, understated man sitting next to me seeing himself in this loud, sweaty braggart was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard. "Is that so?" Liam said, taking a sip of his water. "That is interesting, because I heard he values integrity above all else." Brad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "You are just jealous. You are sitting here eating food I paid for, wearing clothes that probably smell like mothballs, and you have the audacity to question my business relationships. I bet you do not even know what a merger is. You probably think it is a type of blender." My mother chimed in, shaking her head at me. "Sophia, control your husband. He is embarrassing us. Brad is a titan of industry. Liam is a nobody." Just then, Brad's phone buzzed on the table. It was the priority notification sound again. Brad snatched it up, his eyes scanning the screen. A smug grin spread across his face, stretching from ear to ear. "Well, well, well," Brad announced, holding the phone up for everyone to see. "Speak of the devil! It is an email from the chairman's office." He cleared his throat, preparing to read it. My father leaned in, eager. "What does it say, son?" Brad squinted at the screen. "It says, 'Mr. Miller, the chairman has received your proposal. He is very intrigued by your persistence. He will be reviewing your file personally tonight and will make a decision shortly.'" Brad looked up, triumphant. "See? Personal review. That basically means I am in." He is intrigued. "That is business speak for I want to hire you immediately." I looked at Liam. He had one hand under the table. I realized with a jolt that he had typed that message. He was messaging his secretary, giving her the exact words to send to Brad. But Brad, in his arrogance, was twisting the neutral rejection into a victory. Liam leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table. "If he is reviewing your file?" Liam said, his voice deceptively casual. "Then he is probably looking at your debt-to-equity ratio. Last time I checked the public filings for your fund, you were leveraged almost 20-1. In a volatile market, isn't that essentially gambling with your investors' money? If the interest rates hike by even 0.25%, your liquidity would vanish overnight. How do you explain that risk exposure to a conservative partner like Aurora?" The question hung in the air. It was a specific technical question that cut right to the heart of Brad's fraudulent business model. A waiter would not know about debt-to-equity ratios. A waiter would not know about liquidity traps. Brad stared at Liam. For a second, I saw genuine fear in his eyes, the fear of a fraud being unmasked. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Jasmine, then at my father, looking for help. "Why are you talking about numbers?" Jasmine snapped, coming to his rescue. "You are boring everyone. Nobody cares about ratios, Liam. We care about the yachts and the private jets. Stop trying to sound smart. It does not suit you." Brad recovered his composure, laughing nervously. "Exactly, babe. He probably read those terms in a discarded newspaper he found on a park bench." "Look, Liam, stick to pouring water and clearing plates. Leave the macroeconomics to the big boys. You wouldn't understand the complexity of my strategy, even if I drew it with crayons for you." Liam just smiled, that terrifying wolfish smile again. "You are right, Brad. Maybe I will understand it better when I see the final audit." "Audit?" Brad scoffed. "There is no audit. I am untouchable." The dinner wound down with Brad ordering desserts for everyone except me and Liam. He ordered the gold leaf chocolate cake for himself, devouring it while talking about which island he planned to buy once the merger went through. I sat there hungry and tired, watching my family fawn over a man who was hollow inside. Finally, the bill arrived. It came in a leather folder placed discreetly next to Brad's elbow. He didn't even look at it. He just pulled out his platinum card, the one he loved to flash, and tossed it onto the folder with a practiced flick of the wrist. "Put it on this," Brad told the waiter loudly, "and add a 20% tip. I am feeling generous tonight." The waiter, a dignified older man, bowed and took the folder. He walked to the portable terminal station a few feet away. We all watched. Brad was picking his teeth, looking relaxed. My mother was beaming with pride. Then the waiter frowned. He swiped the card again. He typed something into the machine. He shook his head and swiped a third time. He walked back to the table, his expression apologetic but firm. "Sir," the waiter said quietly, "I am afraid the card has been declined." The silence that followed was heavy and instant. "Declined," Brad shouted, standing up. "That is impossible. Do you know who I am? That card has no limit. The machine says do not honor, sir," the waiter said, keeping his voice level. "Perhaps you have another form of payment. The total is $5,200. Brad turned red, then white. He patted his pockets frantically. I must have tripped a fraud alert. Because I am spending so much money. That is it. The bank is just trying to protect me." "Try it again," Brad demanded. "I have tried 3 times, sir," the waiter said. "It is declined." Jasmine looked panicked. "Brad used the other card. The business one. I left it in the room," Brad stammered. My father reached for his wallet but stopped. We all knew my father didn't have $5,000. The awkwardness was suffocating. People at other tables were starting to turn and look. The wealthy family was suddenly being exposed as frauds. Brad looked around, sweat beading on his forehead. "Look, I will call the bank. We'll call, though. Just give me a minute." He pulled out his phone, but his hands were shaking. Liam sighed. It was a sound of pure boredom. He raised his hand slightly, catching the waiter's eye. The waiter looked over, confused. Liam didn't say a word. He just made a small, subtle gesture with 2 fingers tapping his wrist where a watch would be, and then pointed toward the ceiling. It was a code. A signal known only to the highest-level staff at Aurora. The waiter's eyes widened. He looked from Liam to the flustered Brad, then back to Liam. He understood. Suddenly, the waiter's demeanor changed. He closed the leather folder and stepped back. "Apologies, sir," the waiter said loudly enough for the table to hear, but addressing the air generally. "It seems there was a system error on our end. The connectivity is down. Please do not worry about the bill. We will handle it administratively." Brad let out a huge breath, collapsing back into his chair. "See? I told you. System error. Their machines cannot handle my level of spending." "You are so right, honey," Jasmine said, rubbing his arm. "They probably have never seen a limit that high." They laughed, relief washing over them. They went back to being arrogant, oblivious to the fact that they were mere seconds away from being escorted out by security. But as we stood up to leave, I saw the waiter catch Liam's eye. The waiter gave a deep, respectful nod. Liam acknowledged it with a blink. I walked close to Liam as we exited the restaurant. "You paid it, didn't you?" I whispered. Liam adjusted his cuffs, his face impassive. "I did not pay it," he murmured. "I just had them transfer the debt to the presidential suite." "But whose room is that?" I asked. "It is my room, Sophia," Liam said, opening the door for me. "And do not worry, I will make sure Brad pays every cent back. With interest. But for now, let him sleep. Tomorrow he wakes up in a nightmare." The dress Jasmine threw at me was 3 seasons old and 2 sizes too small, a peach-colored taffeta monstrosity that I had worn as a bridesmaid in her first engagement party, the one that ended when the groom realized exactly who he was marrying. "Put this on," she had commanded, tossing it onto the bed of my small basement room. We are going to the charity gala tonight. The theme is Gilded Age Opulence, and I need you to blend in with the wallpaper so you do not distract from my look. I struggled into the dress, feeling the fabric pinch my ribs and restrict my breathing, but I said nothing. I zipped it up, smoothed the skirt, and walked out to join them, because tonight was not about fashion. It was about survival. When I stepped into the hallway, Liam was waiting for me. He was wearing a tuxedo, not a rental and not something off the rack. It was a midnight blue velvet jacket with satin lapels tailored to within an inch of his life. It fit his broad shoulders perfectly, and the crisp white shirt beneath it made his dark skin glow. He looked like a movie star. He looked like royalty. When he saw me in the tight, dated dress, his eyes softened with a mixture of love and fury. "You look beautiful, Sophia," he whispered, taking my hand and kissing the knuckles. "But you do not have to wear that for them." I squeezed his hand back. "It is armor, Liam. Let them think I am weak. It makes the victory sweeter." We walked to the grand ballroom of the Aurora Resort, and the air shifted from the smell of ocean salt to the scent of expensive perfume and old money. The room was a cavern of gold leaf and crystal. Chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, casting a warm, flattering light on the hundreds of guests milling about with champagne flutes. These were the elite, the captains of industry, the heiresses, the politicians. And then there was Brad strutting through the crowd like he owned the building. Brad was wearing a white dinner jacket that was a little too tight across the midsection, and he was sweating. He was nervous, but he was trying to mask it with bluster. He snapped his fingers at us, pointing to a spot near the back wall. "You two stand there," he hissed. "Do not mingle. Do not eat the hors d'oeuvres. You are here for one reason only. When I win the auction item, you are going to carry it to the car. It is heavy and delicate, and I am not risking my manicure or Brad's back." I nodded, taking my place by a potted palm tree. "What exactly are you planning to buy?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Brad laughed, adjusting his bow tie. "Not that you would understand art, Sophia, but tonight they are auctioning off a rare maritime landscape from the late 18th century. It is called the Solitary Ship. It is valued at over $300,000. "And why do you want a painting of a ship?" I asked, knowing Brad hated the ocean. Because Brad leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially, because I did my research. The chairman of Aurora, the ghost. He is obsessed with maritime history. I am going to win this painting and present it to him as a gift along with my merger proposal. It is a strategic bribe, Sophia. It shows him I understand his tastes. Once he accepts a gift of this magnitude, he will have to take a meeting with me. It is genius. I looked at Liam. He was staring at a point in the middle distance, his face perfectly impassive. But I saw a tiny muscle twitch in his jaw. The irony was so thick, I could almost taste it. Brad was planning to buy a painting for Liam to impress Liam without knowing he was treating Liam like a servant. Jasmine sashayed over holding a glass of champagne she had no intention of drinking. She looked me up and down, her lip curling in satisfaction at my discomfort. "Well, at least you are not wearing the uniform," she said. "But honestly, Sophia, that color does nothing for your complexion. You look washed out. And you—" She turned to Liam, poking a finger at the lapel of his velvet jacket. "Where did you get this? Is there a costume shop nearby? How much does it cost to rent a tuxedo for 4 hours? $50. Make sure you return it before midnight, Cinderella, or they might charge you a late fee." Liam looked down at her finger resting on his jacket. "It is not a rental, Jasmine," he said calmly, removing her hand with 2 fingers as if she were a sticky child. "And it costs more than your first car." Jasmine let out a screeching laugh that turned several heads nearby. "Oh my God, Brad, listen to him. He is delusional. He thinks we believe he bought a tuxedo. Honey, you work for tips. Stop pretending. It is embarrassing." Brad joined in the laughter, clapping Liam on the shoulder hard. "Let the man dream, babe. Maybe he spent his life savings on it. Let us just hope he does not spill any soup on it, or he will be washing dishes for a month to pay for the damages. Now quiet down. The auction is starting. The lights dimmed and a hush fell over the room. A spotlight hit the stage where a man with a British accent stood behind a podium. Two assistants in white gloves carefully unveiled an easel covered in a velvet cloth. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. We come now to the highlight of our evening. Lot number 42, The Solitary Ship, oil on canvas, dated 1798. A masterpiece of light and shadow depicting a vessel weathering a storm. Bidding starts at $100,000. The cloth was pulled away. The painting was breathtaking. It was dark and moody, showing a lone ship battling a ferocious wave, but there was a light on the horizon, a beacon of hope. It was beautiful. $100,000, do I hear 100,000? A paddle went up near the front. 100,000 to the gentleman in the gray suit. 150. Another paddle rose. Brad stood there, his paddle gripped tightly in his sweaty hand. He waited. He wanted to make an entrance. 200,000, 250. The price was climbing steadily. Brad nudged Jasmine. Watch this, he whispered. He raised his paddle high. $300,000. Brad shouted, his voice cracking slightly. The room turned to look. 300,000 from Mr. Miller, the auctioneer acknowledged. 350 came a voice from the back. Brad frowned. 400,000, he yelled. 450. Brad was getting agitated. He wiped sweat from his brow. This was getting expensive, but he had to have it. He had to impress the chairman. $500,000, Brad screamed. And that is my final offer. A gasp went through the room. $500,000 for a painting. It was an aggressive bid. A bid designed to scare everyone else away. The auctioneer looked around the room. $500,000 going once. $500,000 going twice. Brad was already grinning. He turned to me and winked. Start doing push-ups, Sophia. You are about to carry a masterpiece. But then the auctioneer stopped. He pressed a hand to his earpiece, listening to something coming through his headset. He looked up, his eyes scanning the back of the room where the phone bank was located. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer said, his voice filled with excitement. We have a telephone bid. Brad's smile faltered. What? Who is on the phone? The auctioneer listened for another second, and then nodded. The bid is $1 million. The room erupted. People gasped. Drinks were spilled. $1 million. It was double the current bid. It was an insane jump. Brad looked like he had been punched in the gut. 1 million, he whispered. That is impossible. Who has that kind of money to just drop on a phone call? $1 million going once, the auctioneer chanted. Brad looked at his paddle. He looked at Jasmine. Do something, Jasmine hissed. Bid again. I cannot. Brad stammered. I do not have the liquidity. The bank will not authorize it. $1 million going twice. Brad looked at Liam. Liam was standing there looking bored, checking his cuticles. Sold, the gavel banged down with a sound like a gunshot. To the bidder on the telephone for $1 million. Brad dropped his paddle. It clattered loudly on the floor. He had lost. His grand plan to bribe the chairman had evaporated in seconds. I do not understand, Brad muttered, pacing in a tight circle. Who could it be? Who knew I wanted this? Someone is trying to sabotage me. Liam leaned forward slightly, his voice low enough that only we could hear. Maybe the chairman bought it himself, Liam said. Maybe he does not like people trying to buy his favor with gifts he can afford to buy 10 times over. Brad spun around, his eyes wild. Shut up. You know nothing. This is a disaster. Now I have no gift. I have no leverage. Wait, Jasmine said, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the stage. The auctioneer is saying something else. We looked up. The auctioneer was holding a note card that had just been handed to him. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, the winning bidder wishes to remain anonymous. However, they have requested that the painting be delivered immediately to the presidential suite of this hotel as a gift to the resort's esteemed guest, Mr. Brad Miller. The room went silent again. Brad froze. Jasmine gasped. Me? Brad squeaked. They bought it for me, the auctioneer continued. The note reads, "A gift for the man who appreciates the value of persistence. I look forward to our meeting." Signed, the chairman. Brad let out a whoop of joy that was entirely undignified. He grabbed Jasmine and spun her around. "I told you," Brad screamed. "I told you he liked me. He bought the painting for me. He spent $1 million on me. I am in Sophia. Do you hear that? I am a partner." I looked at Liam. He was smiling. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a spider watching a fly land directly in the center of the web. "Why did you do that?" I whispered to him while Brad was high-fiving strangers. "Why did you buy it for him?" Liam buttoned his velvet jacket, his eyes dark with promise. "Because Sophia," he whispered. "In the financial world, when you accept a gift of that magnitude, you accept the liability attached to it. He thinks he just won a prize, but he just accepted a Trojan horse. Tomorrow, when I reveal who I am, he will realize that painting was not a gift. It was a down payment on his destruction. Now come on, let us go help him carry his new burden. It is going to be very heavy." The silence in the ballroom was absolute, suffocating us all under the weight of the $1 million bid that hung in the air like a guillotine blade. All eyes were on Brad, waiting to see if the loud man in the white dinner jacket had the courage to back up his earlier bravado. I could see the sweat beading on Brad's forehead, shining under the crystal chandeliers. His chest was heaving, and his hands were clenching and unclenching at his sides. He looked trapped. He had just spent 20 minutes bragging to every person within earshot that he was going to buy this painting for the chairman. If he walked away now, he would look weak. He would look like a failure. And to a man like Brad, looking poor was a fate worse than death. He looked at Jasmine, seeking reassurance, but for once, my sister looked uncertain. She was chewing on her lower lip, her eyes darting around the room, sensing the judgment of the crowd. "Do not let them beat you, Brad," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. "You said you needed this leverage." Brad took a ragged breath. He closed his eyes for a second, doing a mental calculation that I knew was dangerous. I knew his fund was leveraged. I knew he didn't have this kind of cash. But his ego was in the driver's seat, and it was speeding toward a cliff. He opened his eyes and raised his paddle again, his arm shaking slightly. $1.2 million. Brad shouted, his voice cracking on the last word. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People were whispering, pointing. This was high-stakes drama, and they were eating it up. The auctioneer didn't even blink. 1,200,000 to the gentleman in the front. Do I hear 1.3? He pressed his hand to his earpiece again, listening to the mysterious bidder on the phone. He nodded once. The bid is now $1,500,000. Brad let out a sound that was half gasp, half growl. He was turning a dangerous shade of red. 1.5 million. That was definitely beyond his limit. That was money that belonged to his investors. If he spent that, he would be dipping into funds that were legally untouchable. 1.5, Brad screamed. He was not even waiting for the auctioneer to finish. $1.5 million, and I demand to know who I am bidding against. This is rigged. Sir, please maintain decorum, the auctioneer said sternly. The bid is with you at 1.5 million. The room went quiet again. The tension was so thick I felt like I couldn't breathe. I looked at Liam. He was perfectly still, his face a mask of polite disinterest. He wasn't looking at the stage. He was looking at his phone, typing something with his thumb. The auctioneer listened to his headset again. His eyebrows shot up. He looked out at the audience, a small smile playing on his lips. Ladies and gentlemen, the telephone bidder has responded. The new bid is $3 million. The room exploded. $3 million. It was a knockout punch. a figure so absurdly high for a painting valued at 300,000 that it signaled one thing clearly. The bidder had infinite resources and they were tired of playing games. Brad staggered back as if he had been physically slapped. 3 million, he stammered. Going once, the auctioneer called out fast and merciless. Brad looked at his paddle. He looked at the exit. He looked at Jasmine. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He was done. He had been crushed by a wallet vastly deeper than his own, going twice, sold, to the bidder on the telephone for $3 million. Thank you all for your generosity tonight. The gavel banged down, sealing Brad's humiliation. Brad stood there frozen while the room erupted into applause for the invisible victor. He looked small. For the first time since I had met him, he looked entirely powerless. He dropped his paddle on the floor and kicked it away petulantly. "This is incredible," Brad muttered, pacing back and forth, his hands running through his slicked back hair, messing it up. "Who does that? Who spends $3 million just to make a point?" "They did it to embarrass me. They knew I wanted it." Jasmine grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his white dinner jacket. "Stop it, Brad. Everyone is looking at you. Pull yourself together." She turned her head and her eyes landed on me. Immediately, her expression shifted from embarrassment to pure, unadulterated rage. She needed a scapegoat. She needed someone to blame for the fact that her husband had just been publicly neutered and I was the convenient target. "It is you, isn't it?" Jasmine spat, stepping into my personal space. "Excuse me," I said, blinking. "You are bad luck," Jasmine hissed loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Ever since you showed up, everything has gone wrong. You brought your poverty energy into this room. You are standing there in that ugly old dress looking like a funeral mourner, and you jinxed him." I stared at her in disbelief. "You think I made him lose the auction by standing here?" "I think you are a black cloud, Sophia," she continued, poking me in the chest. "You and your waiter husband. You do not belong here. You are vibrating with failure and it is infecting us. Get away from us. Go stand in the corridor. I do not want to see your face until we leave." I opened my mouth to defend myself, to tell her how ridiculous she sounded. But Liam stepped between us. He didn't say a word to Jasmine. He didn't even look at her. He just turned to me and gave me a small, reassuring nod. "I need to make a call," Liam said, his voice calm and steady amidst the chaos. "Excuse me for a moment." He turned and walked away, heading toward the side exit that led to the terrace. "Where is he going?" Brad sneered, watching him go. "Probably going to call his mom to ask for gas money to get home. Let him go." Good riddance. But I was curious. There was something in Liam's eyes before he left, a sharp glint of purpose. I waited a few seconds until Jasmine was distracted trying to comfort Brad, and then I slipped away, following Liam toward the terrace doors. I stopped just inside the heavy velvet curtains, staying hidden in the shadows. Liam was standing on the balcony looking out over the ocean. He had his phone to his ear. His posture had changed. He wasn't standing like the humble husband anymore. He was standing like a general commanding an army. "Yes, I want it delivered tonight," he was saying into the phone, his voice crisp and authoritative. "No, do not wrap it. Have it brought to the penthouse suite immediately. I want to look at it before I go to sleep." My heart skipped a beat. The painting. He was confirming delivery of the painting. He really was the buyer. He paused, listening to the person on the other line. "And regarding Mr. Miller," Liam continued, his voice dropping an octave, becoming colder, "I want a full forensic audit of his funds started by morning. I want to know where every single cent of his liquidity comes from. If he was willing to bid $1.5 million tonight, he is hiding assets or he is stealing them. Find out which one it is. I want the file on my desk before the board meeting tomorrow." He hung up the phone and stood there for a moment, adjusting his cuffs. I shrank back into the shadows, my heart pounding against my ribs. It was one thing to suspect my husband was powerful. It was another thing entirely to hear him dismantle a man's life with a single phone call. He wasn't just wealthy. He was dangerous. And for the first time in my life, I was glad he was on my side. I waited for him to walk back inside before I emerged, trying to compose my face. We walked back to the group together. Brad and Jasmine were standing near the bar arguing in hushed tones. Brad looked defeated, deflated. He needed a win. He needed something to make him feel superior again. When we approached, Brad looked up. He glared at Liam, looking for any flaw, any weakness he could attack to make himself feel big again. Back already, Brad scoffed. Did you get lost finding the bathroom? Or did they kick you out for loitering? Liam ignored the insult. He simply checked the time on his wrist. That was when it happened. As Liam raised his hand, the cuff of his velvet jacket slid up just an inch. Underneath the stage lights, something glinted. It wasn't the dull shine of cheap metal. It was the rich, complex luster of platinum. Brad stopped talking mid-sentence. His eyes locked onto Liam's wrist. He knew watches. Or at least he pretended to. He spent hours reading magazines about them, drooling over timepieces he could not afford. Wait a second, Brad said, stepping forward. He reached out, and before Liam could pull away, Brad grabbed his wrist aggressively, yanking it toward him. Hey, let go of him, I shouted, stepping forward. But Brad ignored me. He was staring at the watch on Liam's wrist, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. It was a Patek Philippe Nautilus, but not just a standard model. It was the 40th anniversary Platinum Edition, a watch that traded for over $500,000 on the secondary market, a watch that billionaires waited years to get. Brad stared at it for a long, frozen second, and then he started to laugh. He dropped Liam's hand and doubled over, laughing so hard he almost spilled his drink. Oh my God, Brad wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. You have got to be kidding me. Jasmine, look at this. Look at what the waiter is wearing. Jasmine leaned in, squinting. A watch. So what? It is a fake, babe, Brad crowed, pointing at Liam's wrist. It is a knockoff, a replica, and it is the most audacious fake I have ever seen. He looked at Liam, shaking his head with pitying amusement. Do you know what that is supposed to be? Brad asked, his voice loud and condescending, drawing the attention of people nearby. That is supposed to be a Patek Philippe Nautilus Platinum. There are only a handful of those in the world. They cost more than a house. And here you are wearing a Canal Street copy that you probably bought for $50. Liam stood perfectly still. He didn't pull his sleeve down. He didn't look embarrassed. He just looked at Brad with that same unnerving calm. You think it is a fake? Liam asked softly. I know it is a fake, Brad shouted, delighting in the scene he was causing. Because people like you do not wear watches like that. People like you wear digital watches. You are trying so hard to look like you belong here, it is pathetic. You are wearing a costume, the tux is a rental, the watch is a fake, and your entire life is a joke. Brad reached out again, grabbing Liam's hand forcefully. Take it off, he demanded. Let me see the back. I bet the movement is quartz. I am going to expose you right now for the fraud you are. Everyone, come look at this clown. Brad pulled hard, trying to wrench the watch off Liam's wrist. It was a physical violation, a step too far. That is enough. The voice didn't come from Liam. It came from behind us, low, powerful, and commanding. We all turned. Standing there, flanked by two large security guards, was Mr. Sterling, the general manager of the resort. And he did not look happy. He looked at Brad's hand clutching Liam's wrist, and his expression was one of absolute horror. Mr. Miller, Mr. Sterling said, his voice like ice. I suggest you unhand my guest immediately before I have you removed from this property for assault. Brad froze, his hand still gripping Liam's arm. Guest, he stammered. He is not a guest. He is a waiter, and he is wearing a fake watch. I was just proving it. Mr. Sterling walked forward. He stopped inches from Brad. I can assure you, Mr. Miller, Sterling said, looking Brad dead in the eye. There is nothing fake about that man, and if you touch him again, you will be leaving this island in handcuffs. Brad slowly released Liam's wrist. He looked from Sterling to Liam, confusion warring with his arrogance. Liam smoothed his cuff down. He looked at Brad and then at the watch. You really should learn to tell the difference between glass and diamond. Liam said quietly. "It might save you from making a very expensive mistake tomorrow." Liam turned to me, offering his arm. "Come on, Sophia. I think I have had enough of the circus for one night. Let us go upstairs. I have a new painting I want to show you." The morning sun pierced through the thin curtains of the basement room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the stale air. I woke up with a headache that felt like a vice grip, a physical manifestation of the stress that had been building since we arrived at the Aurora resort. Beside me, the bed was empty. Liam was gone. He often rose early, a habit from his years of building his empire in silence, but today his absence felt different. It felt charged with intent. I dragged myself out of bed and splashed cold water on my face in the tiny utilitarian sink. The mirror reflected a woman who looked tired, defeated. Dark circles bruised the skin under my eyes. I was Sophia, the archivist. Sophia, the quiet one. Sophia, the doormat. But somewhere inside, buried under layers of family obligation and fear, was a spark of anger that was slowly fanning into a flame. I found Liam in the small kitchenette. He wasn't making coffee. He was sitting at the wobbly table with his laptop open, typing furiously. His face was illuminated by the blue glow of the screen, and for a moment, he looked like a hacker dismantling a firewall. He looked dangerous. "Good morning," I whispered. He looked up and his expression softened instantly. He closed the laptop. "Good morning, beautiful. How did you sleep?" "Like a prisoner awaiting execution," I muttered, pouring myself a glass of tap water. Liam stood up and walked over to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He smelled of fresh soap and expensive cologne, a subtle scent that Brad would never be able to identify, let alone afford. "Today is a good day, Sophia," he murmured into my hair. "Today the trap snaps shut." "What are you talking about?" I asked, pulling back to look at him. Liam smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Last night, after everyone went to sleep, I did some digging. Our friend Brad is not just a braggart, he is desperate." He opened the laptop again and turned it toward me. The screen was filled with spreadsheets, bank statements, and red numbers. Lots of red numbers. I looked at the data, confusing at first, but then the pattern emerged. "He is broke," I whispered. "He is worse than broke," Liam corrected. "He is underwater." He leveraged his entire fund on a series of cryptocurrency bets that crashed last month. He lost everything. The cars, the clothes, this vacation. It is all being paid for with money he doesn't have. He is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Peter is about to come looking for his money. I stared at the screen. The man who had humiliated me, who had thrown money at my husband, was essentially destitute. "So the merger," I started, "is his only lifeline," Liam finished. "He needs Aurora's capital to cover his losses before his investors find out. If he doesn't close this deal by the end of the month, he goes to prison for fraud." My stomach churned. "And he is dragging my family down with him. My parents, Jasmine, they don't know." "They have no idea," Liam said. "They think he is King Midas. They don't realize everything he touches turns to debt." Just then, Liam's phone buzzed. He picked it up and showed me the screen. It was a notification that an email had been sent. "I just sent him an invitation," Liam said. "An official meeting request from the chairman's office. 10 a.m. this morning in the executive boardroom." I gasped. "You are going to meet him? As yourself?" Liam nodded. "It is time. He thinks he is walking into a coronation. He doesn't know he is walking into an interrogation." Suddenly there was a pounding on the door. It wasn't a knock. It was a demand. "Sophia, open up. We know you are in there." It was Jasmine. Her voice was shrill, panicked, and excited all at once. I looked at Liam. He winked at me, and then composed his face into the mask of the simple husband. He walked over and opened the door. Jasmine burst in, followed closely by Brad. They looked manic. Brad was wearing a bathrobe and holding his phone like it was a holy relic. "Get dressed," Brad shouted, not even looking at the squalor of our room. "Get dressed right now." "What is going on?" I asked, clutching my robe tighter. "It happened!" Brad screamed, jumping up and down. The email came. The chairman wants to see me this morning, 10 o'clock. He shoved the phone in my face. Look from the office of the chairman. Subject, strategic partnership discussion. He wants to discuss the merger. I told you the painting would work. Jasmine was beaming, practically vibrating with greed. We are going to be rich, richer than we already are. Sophia, do you hear that your brother-in-law is going to be a partner at Aurora? I looked at Brad. I looked at the man who was drowning in debt and didn't even know the water was rising. Congratulations, I said quietly. You bet, congratulations, Brad yelled. Now listen, you two are coming with us. Why? Liam asked, leaning against the counter, his arms crossed. Because I need an entourage, Brad sneered. Successful men travel with people. It makes me look important. Plus, I need someone to carry my portfolio and take notes. Jasmine is too busy looking good. So you two are it. Put on your best clothes, or whatever rags you have, and meet us in the lobby in 20 minutes. Do not be late. This is the biggest day of my life. They stormed out, leaving the door wide open. I sank onto the bed, burying my face in my hands. I felt exhausted. The lies, the pretending, the sheer toxicity of it all was draining the life out of me. I can't do it, Liam, I sobbed. I can't watch him strut around anymore. I can't let them treat us like dirt. I just want to go home. Please, let's just leave. Liam sat down beside me. He didn't speak for a long time. He just rubbed my back, his hand warm and reassuring. I know it is hard, he said softly. I know you want to run. But Sophia, if we leave now, they win. They keep the house. They put Grandma in a home, and Brad continues to destroy lives. He lifted my chin, so I had to look at him. You are not a victim anymore, Sophia, he said fiercely. You are the wife of the man who owns this entire mountain, and in 1 hour, you are going to watch your husband serve them a dish they will never forget. He stood up and walked to the closet where he had hung his suit. But as he moved, his jacket shifted on the chair and something fell out of the pocket. It was a small black card, heavy metal, sleek, the black Amex Centurion, the card of billionaires. I didn't move to pick it up. I knew what it was. But before Liam could retrieve it, Jasmine appeared in the doorway again. She had forgotten her phone charger. Oops, forgot my... She started, but then she stopped. Her eyes locked onto the black card lying on the dirty linoleum floor. She froze. She looked at the card. Then she looked at Liam. Then back at the card. She lunged for it, snatching it up before Liam could move. She held it up to the light, her eyes wide with shock. Where did you get this? She whispered. Liam stayed calm. I found it, he said easily. You found it, Jasmine screeched, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. You found a black Centurion card. These are invitation only. You have to spend millions just to be invited. She looked at the name on the card. It was embossed in silver. L. Washington. L. Washington, she read. Who is L. Washington? That is a guest. Liam lied smoothly. I found it by the pool. I was going to turn it in to security. Liar, Jasmine yelled. You stole it. You stole it from a guest. Oh my God, you are a thief. She looked at me with pure venom. I knew you were losers, but I didn't know you were criminals. You stole a credit card. You were probably going to try and use it. Jasmine, give it back, I said, standing up. It is not what you think. Oh, I know exactly what this is, Jasmine hissed, clutching the card to her chest. This is leverage. This is proof. I am keeping this. No, Jasmine, I shouted. Shut up, she screamed. I am going to hold on to this, and after Brad's meeting, after he signs the deal, I am going to turn you in to the police. You are going to jail, Liam. And you, Sophia, you are going to be homeless. She turned and ran out of the room, laughing maniacally. I looked at Liam in panic. She has your card. She is going to call the cops. Liam didn't look worried. In fact, he looked almost amused. Let her keep it, he said, straightening his tie. But Liam… It is perfect, Sophia, he said, checking his reflection in the mirror. She thinks she has a weapon, but she is just holding the key to her own destruction. When she tries to use that card against me, she will just be proving exactly who I am. He turned to me and offered his hand. Ready to go to a board meeting, Mrs. Washington? I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, and took his hand. Ready, I whispered. Let us go fire my brother-in-law. The pounding on the door was not the gentle knock of room service delivering breakfast. It was a violent, authoritative thud that shook the thin walls of our basement room. Before I could even set down my hairbrush, the door flew open. The small space was instantly crowded with uniforms. 2 police officers entered first, their hands resting on their holsters, followed by 3 members of the resort security team. And behind them, standing in the hallway like the ringleader of a circus, was Jasmine. She looked ecstatic. Her eyes were bright with malicious triumph, and she was pointing a manicured finger straight at Liam, who was standing calmly by the mirror adjusting his tie. That is him, Officer Jasmine shouted, her voice shrill and echoing in the cramped room. That is the man who stole the credit card. Arrest him before he tries to run. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. Officer, wait, I stammered, stepping in front of Liam. There has been a mistake. There is no mistake. Sophia? My mother's voice cut through the air. She pushed past the security guards, her face twisted in a mask of grief and anger. I knew it. I knew something was wrong with him from the moment I met him. No waiter can afford to act the way he does. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, tears that I knew were more for her damaged reputation than for any concern for me. You brought a criminal into our family, she wailed, wringing her hands. You brought a thief to your sister's honeymoon. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? We are trying to build a legacy here, and you bring us a man who steals from the rich guests upstairs. Ma'am, please step back, the taller police officer said firmly, moving my mother aside. He walked up to Liam, his expression grim. Sir, I need you to step away from the closet and keep your hands where I can see them. We have received a credible report of grand larceny and identity theft. Liam didn't flinch. He didn't look scared or angry. He turned slowly, raising his hands slightly in a gesture of surrender, but his eyes remained locked on Jasmine. On what grounds? Liam asked, his voice steady and calm. On the grounds that I found this in your jacket pocket, Jasmine screamed, holding up the black metal card like a trophy, a black American Express Centurion card. Everyone knows you have to be a multi-millionaire to have one of these. And since we all know you survive on minimum wage and pity tips, the only explanation is that you stole it. She thrust the card at the officer. Check the name, she demanded. It says L. Washington. He probably picked the pocket of some poor guest named Washington by the pool yesterday. The officer took the card. He felt the weight of it, the heavy titanium that distinguished it from regular plastic cards. He looked at Liam, then at the card, then back at Liam. Is this your card, sir? The officer asked. It is, Liam said simply. Liar, Jasmine yelled. Stop lying. Just admit it so they can take you away. God, Sophia, how could you marry a pathological liar? The officer pulled a portable card reader from his belt. He looked skeptical. The contrast between the exclusive card and our dingy basement room was stark. To him, the story made sense. A poor staff member stealing from a wealthy guest. I am going to run the card, the officer said. If this is stolen, it will flag immediately in the system. Please do, Jasmine urged, crossing her arms. And then add on charges for emotional distress because he really scared me. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation system and the ragged breathing of my mother, who was still muttering about how I had ruined the family name. Brad was standing in the doorway, looking smug, checking his watch, as if he couldn't wait for the show to be over so he could get to his important meeting. The officer swiped the heavy black card through the reader. We all watched the small screen. Jasmine was smirking, ready to see the words "stolen" or "declined" flash in red. The machine beeped. A cheerful green light flashed. The officer frowned. He looked at the screen closer. He tapped a few buttons, scrolling through the data that appeared. His eyebrows shot up toward his hairline. He looked at Liam with a new expression. Confusion mixed with sudden wariness. "The card is active," the officer said, his voice losing its aggressive edge. "And the identity verification matches. The card is registered to a Liam Washington." "What?" Jasmine shrieked. "Give me that." She tried to grab the reader, but the officer pulled it back. "Ma'am, do not touch police equipment." "The machine must be broken," Jasmine insisted, her face turning red. "Or he hacked it." "Yes, that is it. He is a hacker. He forged the chip. There is no way that card belongs to him. Look at him, officer. Look at his shoes. Look at this room. Does this look like a man who has a black card?" The officer looked at Liam. He took in the tailored suit, the calm demeanor, the way he held himself. It was true that the room was cheap, but the man standing in it suddenly seemed to take up more space than anyone else. "Sir, do you have identification?" the officer asked politely. Liam reached into his inner pocket slowly. He pulled out his driver's license and handed it over. The officer compared the license to the name on the card reader. "Liam Washington," the officer read aloud. "Well, everything checks out. This is his card." My mother stopped crying. She blinked, looking from the officer to Liam. But that is impossible," she stammered. "He is a waiter. Sophia told us he is a waiter." "I never said that," I whispered. "You assumed that." Brad finally stepped into the room, laughing nervously. Okay, hold on. This is ridiculous. Obviously he has a fake ID to match the stolen card. These guys are pros. They steal a wallet, they make a fake ID fast. Officer, you cannot seriously believe this, right?" The officer looked annoyed now. "Sir, the verification connects directly to the bank database. You cannot fake a live chip transaction. Unless you have proof that this man is not who he says he is, I have no grounds to detain him. In fact, I am bordering on harassment here." He handed the card and license back to Liam. "Sorry for the disturbance, Mr. Washington. We have to follow up on every call." Liam took the card, slipping it back into his pocket. "No apology necessary, officer. My sister-in-law has a vivid imagination." Jasmine looked like she was going to explode. She was vibrating with rage, her fists clenched at her sides. "I am not imagining it," she screamed. "He is a fraud. I know it. I can feel it. You are useless. I am calling the manager. I am calling Mr. Sterling. He will know the truth. He knows every VIP on this island, and he definitely does not know you." As if summoned by her voice, the crowd in the hallway parted. The sound of purposeful footsteps echoed on the tile floor. Mr. Sterling, the general manager, appeared in the doorway. He was immaculate as always, but his face was pale. He had clearly run all the way down from the executive offices when he heard that the police were raiding room B14. "What is the meaning of this?" Mr. Sterling demanded, his voice sharp. "Why are there police officers in my resort?" "Oh, thank God," Jasmine cried, rushing over to him. "Mr. Sterling, you have to help us. This man," she pointed a shaking finger at Liam, "has stolen a black card from one of your guests. The police are being incompetent and letting him go. Please tell them he doesn't belong here." Mr. Sterling looked at Jasmine, then at the police, and finally his eyes landed on Liam. I saw the color drain from Mr. Sterling's face completely. He looked terrified, not just worried, but deeply professionally terrified. He ignored Jasmine. He ignored the police. He walked straight past my mother, who was trying to get his attention. He stopped 3 feet in front of Liam. And then, to the absolute shock of everyone in the room, Mr. Sterling bowed. It wasn't a nod. It was a formal, respectful bow of a subordinate to a superior. "Thungai Washington," Mr. Sterling said, his voice trembling slightly. "Is something wrong? I was informed there was a disturbance. I apologize profusely if these people have bothered you." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Jasmine's mouth fell open. My mother clutched her pearls. The police officer looked relieved that he hadn't cuffed Liam. Liam looked at Mr. Sterling with a cool, detached expression. "It is fine," Arthur Liam said, using the manager's first name. "Just a small misunderstanding. My sister-in-law was just returning some property of mine." Mr. Sterling turned on his heel and glared at Jasmine with a ferocity that made her step back. "Mrs. Miller," he hissed, "you accused Mr. Washington of theft. Do you have any idea who you are speaking to?" Jasmine stammered, looking from Sterling to Liam. But he is a waiter. He is poor. Mr. Sterling opened his mouth to shout, to reveal everything, to scream the truth that Liam owned the very ground we were standing on. But Brad stepped forward, his face lighting up with a sudden epiphany of pure stupidity. Wait! Brad interrupted, laughing loudly. "Oh, I get it now." He clapped his hands, looking around the room with a smug grin. "Mr. Sterling, you almost gave me a heart attack. You are so professional, it is scary." Brad walked over to Liam and patted him on the shoulder hard. "Wow. What are the odds?" Brad chuckled, shaking his head. "You have the same name as a VIP, don't you?" He looked at Mr. Sterling for confirmation. "That is it, right?" Brad continued, answering his own question. "There is a real Liam Washington staying in the penthouse. A billionaire guest. And this guy, my brother-in-law, just happens to have the same name. That is why the card worked. He probably found the real guy's card, and since the names matched, the machine got confused. Or maybe he just legally changed his name to match a stolen credit card. That is actually pretty clever." Brad looked at us, beaming as if he had solved the riddle of the century. "It is a coincidence," Brad declared. "A 1 in a million coincidence." Jasmine let out a breath of relief. "Oh my God, of course. That makes so much sense. Because there is no way he is rich. He is just a copycat." Mr. Sterling looked at Brad as if he were a bug he wanted to squash. He opened his mouth to correct him, to destroy this delusion once and for all. But Liam raised a hand. A subtle motion. "Let us not delay your meeting, Brad," Liam said, checking his watch. "It is 9:55. You do not want to be late for the chairman. He hates tardiness." Brad's eyes went wide. "The meeting? Oh, shoot the meeting." He grabbed Jasmine's hand. "Forget about this loser," Brad yelled, dragging her toward the door. "We will deal with the police later. I have a company to merge. Come on, Jasmine. This is it." They ran out of the room, leaving the police and Mr. Sterling behind. My mother looked at Liam one last time, sniffing disdainfully. "You got lucky today," she spat. "But luck runs out." She followed them, leaving me alone with Liam and the manager. Mr. Sterling looked at Liam, looking like he wanted to faint. "Sir, I am so sorry. Shall I have them removed immediately?" "No," Arthur Liam said, buttoning his jacket. "Not yet. Let them go to the boardroom." Liam turned to me, offering his arm. "After all, Sophia," he smiled, "it would be rude to keep them waiting. The chairman is ready to see them now." The elevator ride to the 50th floor of the Aurora Tower was silent, except for the sound of Brad checking his reflection in the polished brass doors. He adjusted his tie for the 10th time and smoothed back his hair, which was already slick with too much gel. He was vibrating with a mixture of adrenaline and arrogance, the kind of nervous energy that radiates from a man who knows he is a fraud, but believes he is charming enough to get away with it. Jasmine stood beside him, holding his hand and whispering affirmations about how he was a king and this was his kingdom to conquer. My mother stood in the corner, clutching her pearls and looking at the floor numbers climb higher and higher, her face set in a mask of haughty expectation. Liam and I stood at the back. Liam was holding a heavy leather briefcase that Brad had shoved into his chest the moment we left the lobby. Here, Brad had sneered. "Make yourself useful for once. Carry the documents. Consider it an unpaid internship. You might learn something about how real wealth is generated. Watch and learn, waiter boy, because this is as close to a boardroom as you will ever get in your life." Liam had taken the bag without a word. He held it not like a servant, but like a weapon, his grip firm and his posture relaxed. I looked at him searching for a sign of the storm that was about to break, but his face was a calm sea. Only his eyes gave him away. They were dark and fixed on the back of Brad's neck with a terrifying intensity. The elevator chimed soft and melodic as the doors slid open, revealing a foyer of glass and steel. The air here was cooler than in the lobby, scented with filtered air and serious money. A receptionist sat behind a floating marble desk. She looked up and I saw her eyes widen slightly as they landed on Liam. She started to stand up, her mouth opening to greet him, but Liam gave her a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. She froze, confused but professional, and slowly sat back down. "Mr. Miller and guests," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "The board is expecting you. Please go right through the double doors at the end of the hall." Brad didn't even acknowledge her. He marched past the desk, his heels clicking loudly on the stone floor. He threw the double doors open with a dramatic flourish, expecting to make a grand entrance that would silence the room. The executive boardroom was massive, a cavern of floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the entire island and the ocean beyond. In the center of the room sat a long table made of dark, polished mahogany that looked like it cost more than my parents' house. Seated around it were 12 people, men and women in severe suits with laptops open and faces that revealed absolutely nothing. These were the sharks, the veterans of industry who managed billions of dollars in assets. They stopped talking the moment we entered, turning to look at us with cold, analytical eyes. At the far end of the table facing the door was a single empty chair. It was slightly larger than the others, upholstered in black leather. The chairman's seat. Brad faltered for a second, intimidated by the sheer gravity of the room, but his ego quickly took the wheel. He strode to the front of the room, near the presentation screen, and clapped his hands together. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen," Brad boomed, his voice too loud in the acoustically perfect room. "I am Brad Miller, but you already know that. You have seen the numbers, you have seen the projections. I am here to accept your partnership offer and to lead Aurora into the future." He gestured for Jasmine and my parents to sit in the observer chairs along the wall. Then he snapped his fingers at Liam. "You, put the briefcase on the table, and then go stand in the back. Do not touch anything. Do not breathe too loud. Just try to blend into the drywall." Liam walked forward. He placed the briefcase on the table gently. He didn't retreat to the back. He stood near the wall, but he remained close, watching. Brad didn't notice. He was too busy connecting his laptop to the system. "I know the chairman is not here yet," Brad said, glancing at the empty leather chair. "A bit unprofessional if you ask me, but I suppose when you are at the top, you can make your own schedule. No matter, I will start without him. He can catch up." One of the board members, a woman with steel gray hair and glasses that looked like they could cut glass, spoke up. Her nameplate read, "Eleanor Vance, Chief Financial Officer." "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice dry and sharp. "The chairman is never late. He is always precisely where he needs to be." Brad waved her off with a dismissive laugh. Sure. Look, let us get down to brass tacks. I have looked at your portfolios. They are solid, I will give you that. But they are boring. You are too conservative. You are afraid of risk. And in this economy, if you are not disrupting, you are dying." He clicked a button, and a slide appeared on the screen showing a complex web of investments that I recognized from Liam's laptop earlier. It was Brad's fund. "This is what I bring to the table," Brad declared, pacing back and forth. "Aggressive growth, high-yield cryptocurrency futures, leveraged assets. I have built a machine that prints money, but I need capital to scale it. That is where you come in. You give me access to Aurora's liquidity, and I give you returns that will make your current dividends look like pocket change." He paused for effect, expecting awe. The room remained silent. "I know what you are thinking." Brad continued, his voice taking on a condescending tone. "You are thinking it sounds too good to be true. That is because you are thinking like employees, not visionaries. The problem with this company is that it is run by dinosaurs. You are stuck in the past. You need a tiger. You need someone who isn't afraid to break a few rules to win. He leaned against the table, looking directly at the empty chair. Frankly, Brad said, smirking, I think your chairman knows this. That is why he hasn't shown his face in 5 years. He is hiding. He knows he has lost his touch. He needs a successor. And lucky for you, I am here to save his legacy from his own incompetence. A gasp came from the corner where my mother was sitting. Even she knew that insulting the owner of the company was a dangerous strategy. But Brad was drunk on his own voice. So Brad concluded, let us stop wasting time. Where is the contract? I assume the chairman has already signed off on it. I want to sign, get my access codes, and start cleaning house. Starting with whoever manages your hospitality audits, because I had a very unpleasant experience with a waiter yesterday. He laughed, looking back at Liam. Right, waiter boy. See, this is how the rich work. We walk into a room, we tell people what to do, and we walk out with a check. The room was deadly silent. The board members were not looking at Brad anymore. They were looking past him. They were looking at Liam. Eleanor Vance closed her laptop with a soft click. Mr. Miller, she said quietly, you are right about one thing. We do need to stop wasting time. She looked at the clock on the wall. The second hand ticked onto the 12. It was exactly 10 o'clock. The heavy double doors behind us didn't open. No one else walked in, but movement caught Brad's eye. Liam stepped away from the wall. Brad frowned, annoyed. Hey, I told you to stay put. Where do you think you are going? The bathroom is in the hallway. Liam didn't answer. He didn't look at Brad. He walked past him, his stride long and purposeful. He walked past the stunned board members who were now sitting up straighter in their chairs. He walked all the way to the head of the table. Brad laughed nervously. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Get away from that chair. That is the chairman's seat. You are going to get us all thrown out. Liam stopped behind the large black leather chair. He placed his hands on the back of it, the platinum watch on his wrist, catching the light from the window. Brad rushed forward, grabbing Liam's arm. Are you deaf? I said move. You are embarrassing me. You are just a servant. Liam turned his head slowly. He looked at Brad, and the expression on his face was terrifying. It was the look of a judge delivering a death sentence. Sit down, Brad, Liam said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight of authority that made the windows rattle. Brad froze, his hand falling from Liam's arm. What did you say to me? I said sit down, Liam repeated. And then, to the horror of my entire family, Liam pulled out the chairman's chair. He buttoned his suit jacket. He sat down at the head of the table. He rested his elbows on the mahogany, looking down the long line of executives. Good morning, everyone, Liam said, his voice clear and commanding. I apologize for the theatrical nature of this meeting, but sometimes you have to let a clown perform his entire act before you bring down the curtain. He turned to Eleanor Vance. Eleanor, please bring up the forensic audit of Mr. Miller's fund. I believe he mentioned something about aggressive growth. Let us show him the difference between growth and theft. Brad stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. He looked at the empty chair that was now filled by the man he had called a waiter. He looked at the board members who were nodding respectfully at Liam, and then the realization hit him like a freight train. You, Brad whispered, his voice trembling. You are... Liam leaned back, steepling his fingers. I am the chairman, Liam said. And Brad, you are fired. The silence in the boardroom was shattered by Brad's voice, which rose to a screeching pitch that hurt my ears. He lunged forward, his hands trembling as he pointed a shaking finger at Liam. Get up! Brad screamed, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. What do you think you are doing, you lunatic? That is the chairman's seat. You are staining the leather with your cheap suit. Get up immediately before I have security throw you off the balcony. Brad looked around the room, expecting the board members to jump to his defense, expecting them to be outraged that a servant had usurped the throne. But nobody moved. Eleanor Vance, the CFO, simply adjusted her glasses and looked at Brad with a mixture of pity and disgust. The other executives remained perfectly still, their eyes fixed on Liam, waiting for his command. Brad was too blinded by his own ego to see the reality in front of him. He grabbed the back of the chair, trying to physically pull it away from the table, but Liam didn't budge. He sat there like a statue carved from granite, immovable and terrifyingly calm. "Are you deaf?" Brad yelled, spitting as he spoke. "I said get up. You are going to ruin my deal. You are going to ruin everything. Jasmine, call the police. Tell them your husband has lost his mind." Jasmine fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking so badly she dropped it on the carpet. She looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. "Sophia, do something," she hissed. "Get him out of there. He is going to get us all arrested." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched my husband. Liam reached out slowly. His hand moved with deliberate grace as he adjusted the gooseneck microphone in front of him. He tapped it once. Thump! The sound echoed through the room, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system. It was a heavy, authoritative sound that silenced Brad, screaming instantly. Brad froze, his hands still gripping the chair, his mouth hanging open. Liam leaned forward closer to the microphone. He looked up at Brad, and for the first time his eyes were not the eyes of the man who cooked dinner in our small kitchen. They were the eyes of a titan. "You seem confused," Liam said, his voice booming through the speakers, cold and crisp. "You keep asking for the chairman. You keep asking for the man who built this empire. You keep asking for the ghost." Liam paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Well, here I am." Brad blinked rapidly. He let go of the chair and took a stumbling step back. What did you say?" Brad whispered. "I said, I am the chairman." Liam repeated, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "I am the founder of Aurora Holdings. I am the one who built this resort. I am the one who bought that painting you failed to bid on last night. And I am the one who has been reading your pathetic emails all week." "No," Brad stammered, shaking his head violently. "No, that is impossible. You are a waiter. You are Sophia's husband. You live in a basement. You are a nobody." Liam didn't answer. He simply gestured to Eleanor Vance with a small nod. Eleanor opened her laptop and pressed a single key. The massive presentation screen behind Liam, which had been displaying Brad's fraudulent charts, flickered and changed. A new image appeared. It was a high-resolution professional photograph of Liam. But in this photo, he wasn't wearing a t-shirt. He was wearing the same bespoke suit he had on, now standing in front of the Aurora Tower. Next to the photo, the text was clear and undeniable. Liam Washington, founder and CEO of Aurora Holdings, net worth $12 billion, philanthropist of the year. Below that were headlines from Forbes and Wall Street Journal. The ghost of hospitality revealed. How Liam Washington built an empire from nothing. The man who owns the skyline. The room seemed to spin. I watched the blood drain from Brad's face until he looked like a corpse. He looked at the screen, then at Liam, then back at the screen. The resemblance was undeniable. The truth was staring him in the face in 40-foot high-definition pixels. "Oh my God," Jasmine whispered. She was holding a glass of water she had taken from the side table. Her fingers went numb. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, the sound like a gunshot in the silent room. Water splashed over her designer shoes, but she didn't even flinch. She was staring at Liam with a look of absolute horror as the realization of what she had done crashed down on her. She had treated a billionaire like a slave. She had accused the owner of the resort of stealing a credit card that had his own name on it. But the most dramatic reaction came from the corner. My mother stood up slowly, clutching her chest. Her eyes were rolling back in her head. She looked at me, then at Liam, and her brain simply could not process the shift in reality. The son-in-law she had called trash. The man she had tried to evict. The man she had insulted every single day for years was the most powerful person she had ever met. "Liam," she gasped. And then her knees gave out. This wasn't one of her fake fainting spells designed to get attention. This was real. She collapsed onto the carpet with a dull thud, completely unconscious. My father rushed to her side, fanning her frantically, but his eyes never left Liam, filled with a terrifying mixture of awe and fear. Brad was still standing there, paralyzed. He looked like a man who had just watched a nuclear bomb go off in his living room. You own all of this," Brad rasped, his voice barely audible. "I do," Liam said, leaning back in the leather chair. "And as the owner, I have to make difficult decisions about who we partner with." Liam picked up a pen, twirling it effortlessly between his fingers. "You came here today asking for capital," Liam continued. "You came here asking for access to my network. You came here thinking you could charm the chairman. But Brad, you forgot the first rule of business. Character is currency, and you are bankrupt." Liam looked at the board members. "I believe we have heard enough," Liam said. "I am formally rejecting the proposal from Miller Capital. And Brad, consider yourself permanently blacklisted from any future dealings with Aurora or any of its subsidiaries. You are fired from my list of potential partners. In fact, you are fired from ever setting foot on my properties again." Brad let out a sound like a wounded animal. "You can't do that. I need this deal. My investors, they are waiting. I promised them." Liam stopped twirling the pen. He slammed it down on the table. "Your investors," Liam said, his voice turning hard as steel. "You mean the victims you scammed?" Liam reached under the table and pulled out a thick, heavy folder. It wasn't the thin marketing brochure Brad had brought. It was a thick dossier filled with legal documents and bank records. He threw the folder onto the mahogany table. It slid across the polished surface and stopped right in front of Brad. "Open it," Liam commanded. Brad looked at the folder. He didn't want to touch it. He looked like he wanted to run, to jump out the window, to disappear. "What is this?" Brad whispered. "That," Liam said, "is the result of the forensic audit I ordered last night. While you were busy bragging about a merger that didn't exist, my team was looking into your liquidity." Liam stood up now, towering over the table. "We found the shell companies, Brad. We found the offshore accounts in the Caymans where you were hiding the losses. We found the emails where you instructed your accountant to falsify the quarterly reports." Brad started to shake. No, that is private. You can't see that." "It is a Ponzi scheme," Liam declared, his voice ringing out like a judge passing sentence. "You are paying old investors with new money. You are running a classic fraud, and you came here hoping I would give you $50 million to plug the hole before the ship sank." Brad looked at Jasmine, who was sobbing quietly. He looked at my unconscious mother. He looked at me, standing tall beside the man he had called a waiter. "Please," Brad begged, tears streaming down his face. "Please, Liam. We are family. You can't destroy me. I will pay it back. Just give me a loan. Just a small loan. I can fix this. Do not ruin me." Liam looked at him with zero sympathy. "I am not the one ruining you," Liam said. "You did that yourself when you decided to build a life on lies." Liam pointed to the folder. "And regarding your request for a loan, I am afraid I have already forwarded that file to a different agency." Brad looked up, his eyes wide with terror. "Who?" Brad choked out. "Who did you send it to?" Liam checked his watch, the platinum Patek Philippe glinting in the light. "The FBI," Liam said coldly. "They are waiting in the lobby. I told them you would be down in 5 minutes. I suggest you start thinking about your defense because from what I saw in those files, you are going to be trading your Italian suits for an orange jumpsuit for a very long time." Liam pressed a button on the intercom. "Security, please escort Mr. Miller to the authorities. And call a paramedic for my mother-in-law. She seems to be having a hard time accepting the truth." Here is the continuation of the script for Chapter 12, written in English, formatted for AI voice reading, with a continuous flow and emotional depth. The air in the boardroom was so thick with tension that it felt like it could snap a human spine. Brad was trembling violently, his hands gripping the edge of the mahogany table until his knuckles turned white. The folder Liam had slid across the table lay open, like a dissected corpse, exposing the rotting organs of Brad's financial life. But even with the evidence staring him in the face, Brad's instinct for self-preservation kicked in with a desperate, frantic energy. He shook his head, a manic laugh escaping his throat. "This is a mistake," Brad stammered, looking from Liam to the board members, his eyes wide and pleading. "A clerical error. That is all this is. My accountant. He is incompetent. He must have put the decimals in the wrong place. Or maybe it was a software glitch. You know how technology is these days. It messes things up. I am a visionary, not a mathematician. I trust people to handle the back end, and clearly my team has let me down." He pointed a shaking finger at the documents. "I did not authorize those transfers," Brad insisted, his voice rising in pitch. "I had no idea money was being moved to the Cayman Islands. I am a victim of embezzlement, Liam. You have to believe me. My staff. They stole from me and tried to frame me. If you call the FBI on me, you are punishing the wrong man. I am innocent." Liam watched this performance with the same expression one might wear while watching a cockroach struggle on its back. He didn't interrupt. He let Brad spin his web of lies until he was completely entangled in them. When Brad finally paused to take a ragged breath, Liam reached out and touched the control panel on the table. "You blame your accountant," Liam said calmly. "That is interesting, because I have something that suggests you were quite hands-on with your strategy." Liam pressed a button. The surround sound speakers hidden in the walls crackled to life. Suddenly, Brad's voice filled the room. It wasn't the terrified voice we were hearing now. It was the arrogant, slurred voice of a man drunk on power and expensive vodka. It was the voice from the poolside bar yesterday, the conversation Liam had recorded while pretending to check the inventory logs. "Listen, guys," the recording of Brad boasted loud and clear. "The investors are sheep. They give me their retirement funds and I tell them we are investing in quantum computing. But really, I am just using the fresh cash to pay off the old guys who want to cash out. It is a classic churn and burn. As long as I keep bringing in new money, nobody notices that the pot is empty. I just need to close this deal with Aurora to get a fresh injection of 50 million. Once I have that, I can buy the island and disappear before the whole house of cards collapses." The recording ended with the sound of Brad and his friends laughing, the clinking of glasses echoing in the deadly silent boardroom. Brad stood frozen. The color had drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. There was no way to deny it. It was his voice, his words, his confession recorded in high definition. Liam looked at Brad, his eyes cold and hard. "Was that a clerical error too?" Liam asked. "Or was that a software glitch?" Brad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like he had been punched in the gut. He slumped against the table, his legs no longer able to support his weight, and then the room shifted again. Jasmine, who had been standing by the window weeping silently, suddenly let out a sharp gasp. She looked at Brad with wide, horrified eyes as if seeing a monster for the first time. "But I knew my sister. I knew that look wasn't just horror, it was calculation." She was doing the math, and realizing that her golden ticket was about to go to prison, she lunged at him. "You liar!" Jasmine screamed, shoving Brad hard in the chest. Brad stumbled back, almost tripping over the chair. "Jasmine! Do not touch me!" Jasmine shrieked, backing away from him as if he were contagious. "You told me you were a genius. You told me we were building a legacy. You stole from people. You are a criminal." She turned to Liam, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. Her hands were clasped together in a pleading gesture. "Liam, please," she begged. "You have to believe me. I didn't know. I swear on my life I didn't know. He lied to me too. I am a victim here just like those investors. He used me. He dazzled me with gifts and trips, and I was too naive to ask where the money came from." She pointed an accusing finger at her husband. "He is a monster," she sobbed. "I want a divorce. I want nothing to do with him. Please, Liam, tell the police I had nothing to do with this." I am just a housewife. I am innocent. Brad looked at her betrayed. Jasmine, how can you say that? We did this together. Shut up, Jasmine screamed. We did nothing together. You are going to jail alone. I watched her performance almost convincing. She looked fragile. She looked broken. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then Liam laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound that cut through Jasmine's hysterics like a knife. He picked up the folder again and flipped it open to a marked page near the back. You are a victim, Jasmine. Liam asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. Yes? Jasmine nodded vigorously, wiping her eyes. I am. I had no idea about his business. Liam looked down at the document in front of him. That is strange, he said. Because according to these incorporation papers filed in Panama, you are listed as the sole proprietor and CEO of 3 separate companies: JM Consulting, Sapphire Holdings, and Miller Lifestyle Group. Jasmine froze. Her tears stopped instantly. Liam looked up at her, his gaze piercing. These are the shell companies that received the stolen funds, Liam explained. When Brad took money from pensioners, he didn't put it in his own account. He put it in yours. The Ferrari you drove here in, registered to Sapphire Holdings, the penthouse apartment in the city, registered to JM Consulting, and the 6-figure shopping spree you went on last month, paid for by Miller Lifestyle Group. Liam tapped the signature line on the document. And right here at the bottom of every single transfer authorization is a signature. It is very distinctive with a little heart over the I. Is that not your signature, Jasmine? Jasmine stared at the paper. She opened her mouth to argue, to deny, to spin another lie, but the evidence was overwhelming. She had signed everything. Brad had put the assets in her name to protect himself, and she had happily signed because she loved seeing her name on official documents. Her vanity had become her prison sentence. I didn't read what I was signing. Jasmine whispered, her voice trembling. He told me they were tax forms. Ignorance of the law is not a defense, Liam said, closing the folder with a finality that echoed in the room. Especially when you were spending the proceeds of the crime. You are not a victim, Jasmine. You are an accomplice. You are the money launderer, and in the eyes of the federal government that makes you just as guilty as he is. Jasmine looked at me, desperate for a lifeline. Sophia. She choked out, reaching for my hand. Help me. Tell him. I am your sister. You can't let them take me. I can't go to jail. I am not built for jail. Please, Sophia. Make him stop. I looked at her. I looked at the sister who had bullied me my entire life. The sister who had tried to ruin my wedding. The sister who had treated me like a slave for the last 2 days. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I also saw the selfishness. Even now, she wasn't sorry for what they had done. She was only sorry she got caught. I pulled my hand away. You are right, Jasmine, I said quietly. You are my sister. But you made your choice when you decided that money was more important than family. You signed the papers. You spent the money. And now you have to pay the bill. Jasmine collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, curled into a ball of misery and expensive silk. Brad stood staring at the wall, completely catatonic. My mother was still unconscious on the carpet, receiving oxygen from a paramedic who had just arrived. Liam stood up, adjusting his suit jacket. He looked at the wreckage of my family with a somber expression. He didn't look happy. He looked like a man who had done a necessary but unpleasant duty. He walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. It is done, he whispered. And then we heard it. From 50 floors down, muffled by the thick glass, but unmistakable, the sound of sirens. Not just one, but many. A chorus of wails rising from the street below, getting louder and louder, drawing closer to the tower, the sound of justice coming to collect its due. Brad flinched at the sound. He walked slowly to the window and looked down. They are here, he whispered. Liam nodded. Yes, they are. And Brad, do not try to run. The elevators have been disabled. The only way out of this room is in handcuffs. The double doors of the executive boardroom burst open with a force that made the heavy mahogany table vibrate. The room was suddenly flooded with men and women in navy blue windbreakers with the yellow letters FBI emblazoned on their backs. They moved with a terrifying efficiency that signaled they had been building this case for a long time, and today was merely the final act of a long investigation. Brad let out a strangled cry and tried to scramble backward toward the window, but there was nowhere to go. 2 agents were on him in seconds. They spun him around and slammed him against the glass wall, the force of the impact cracking the expensive frame of his glasses. "You have the right to remain silent." An agent recited, his voice devoid of emotion as he pulled Brad's arms behind his back. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Brad was sobbing openly now, loud, ugly sounds of a man who had never faced a consequence in his life. "I did not do it," he wailed, snot running down his face. "It was the market. The market crashed. I was going to pay it back. I swear I was going to pay it back." I watched as the cold steel handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The sound was sharp and final. This was the man who had thrown money at my husband yesterday. This was the man who had called me pathetic. Now he was nothing more than a criminal in a wrinkled suit being read his rights. But the nightmare was not over. Another agent walked over to Jasmine, who was still curled on the floor. "Jasmine Miller," the agent said, looking down at her. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy." Jasmine screamed. It was a high, piercing sound that made my skin crawl. She scrambled backward on her hands and knees, her expensive silk dress tearing on the leg of the chair. "No!" she shrieked, kicking out at the agent. "Do not touch me. I am not a criminal. I am a victim. Sophia, tell them. Tell them I am innocent." She looked at me, her eyes wide and wild. She crawled toward me, reaching out with desperate manicured hands. "Sophia, please," she begged, grabbing the hem of my skirt. "You cannot let them take me. I am your little sister. We played dolls together. We grew up together. You promised to always look out for me. Do something. Make Liam stop this. He is your husband. He will listen to you." I looked down at her. I saw the tears cutting tracks through her foundation. I saw the terror. But I also remembered the years of torment. I remembered her laughing when I didn't get a date to prom. I remembered her stealing my college fund to buy a car. I remembered her making me carry her bags yesterday like a servant. I stepped back, pulling my skirt from her grasp. "I did look out for you, Jasmine," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I tried to warn you about Brad years ago. I told you he was flashy and unstable. You told me I was jealous. You told me I was bitter because I settled for a poor man. But I didn't know," Jasmine sobbed as the agent pulled her to her feet and cuffed her hands behind her back. "I am sorry, Sophia. I am so sorry. Please just help me." "I cannot help you," I said coldly. "You signed the papers, you spent the money, and now you are going to prison." Just then a groan came from the corner of the room. My mother Joyce was stirring. The paramedics had revived her, and she was sitting up, blinking in confusion. She looked around the chaotic room, seeing Brad against the wall and Jasmine in handcuffs. Her brain seemed to reboot, processing the new hierarchy in the room. Her eyes landed on Liam, sitting in the chairman's seat, looking like a king. Then they landed on me, standing beside him. She scrambled to her feet, pushing the paramedic away. She didn't run to her crying daughter. She didn't run to her arrested son-in-law. She ran to me. "Sophia," she cried, rushing over and throwing her arms around me. "Oh, my baby. My sweet, successful girl." I stood stiff as a board, my arms at my sides. The scent of her expensive perfume was suffocating. "Thank God you are all right," she babbled, pulling back to look at me with a smile that was terrifyingly fake. "I knew it. I always knew there was something special about Liam. I told your father just last week. I said, Marcus, that boy has potential. He has a quiet power. And look at him. He owns all of this." She gestured wildly at the room. "He is a billionaire, Sophia," she whispered, her eyes gleaming with greed. "A billionaire, and you are his wife. That means we are safe. That means the family is safe." She turned to Liam, clasping her hands together. "Liam's son." she said, her voice dripping with honey. You have to help us. This is all a big misunderstanding. Brad is a fool, but Jasmine is family. And family protects family. Tell these officers to let her go. You have the power. You can make this go away. We can all go to dinner tonight and laugh about this. We will treat you with the respect you deserve. I promise. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had threatened to sell my grandmother's house yesterday. The woman who had called me a disappointment because I didn't marry a banker. The woman who was now ready to throw Brad under the bus and rewrite history just to stay close to the money. It was the most disgusting thing I had ever seen. Stop it, I said, pushing her away. Sophia, my mother, looked hurt. Why are you acting like this? I am your mother. I am trying to fix this. You are not trying to fix anything. I snapped, my anger finally boiling over. You are trying to secure your retirement. You are trying to latch onto the next host because the parasite you bet on just got arrested. How dare you speak to me like that, she gasped, clutching her pearls. I raised you. I gave you everything. You gave me nothing. I shouted, my voice echoing in the boardroom. You gave me insecurities. You gave me doubt. You gave me a lifetime of feeling like I wasn't enough. I pointed at Liam, who was watching me with pride. Yesterday, you told me he was an embarrassment, I said, my voice shaking. You told me he was a waiter. You told me I was pathetic for marrying him. You said I was ruining the family image. I was stressed. My mother stammered, backing away. I didn't mean it. You meant every word I said, stepping closer to her. You told me to divorce him. You told me to apologize to Brad. Well, look around, Mother. Brad is in handcuffs. And the waiter you spit on owns the building you are standing in. Sophia, please, she begged, reaching for my hand again. Do not do this. Do not turn your back on us. We need you. You need money, I corrected her, pulling my hand away as if she burned me. You do not need me. You never needed me. You just need someone to pay for your country club membership. Well, guess what? The bank is closed. I turned to Liam. I am done, I whispered. I want them gone. Liam stood up. He buttoned his jacket and walked around the table. He stood beside me, a towering wall of protection. He looked at the agents and then at the resort security team standing by the door. You heard my wife, Liam said, his voice low and dangerous. He looked at my mother, who was trembling, and at Jasmine, who was weeping in the grip of the FBI. Security, Liam barked. Yes, Mr. Chairman, the head of security responded instantly, stepping forward. Get these people out of my sight, Liam ordered, pointing at my family. Remove the prisoners to the federal transport, and remove this woman from the premises, revoke their access cards, cancel their reservations, and ensure that if they ever step foot on Aurora property again, they are arrested for trespassing. But I am his mother-in-law, Joyce shrieked as a guard grabbed her arm. You cannot do this. I am staying in the villa. Not anymore, Liam said coldly. Take them away, immediately. The drive back to the city was a quiet affair. The silence in the back of the town car was heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the occasional sniffle from my mother. They had been escorted off the Aurora property, like trespassers, their luggage thrown into a taxi, their dignity left somewhere back in the executive boardroom. They had nowhere to go but home. Or at least they thought they had a home to go to. I followed them in Liam's car, watching the taxi weave through the traffic. I knew what was waiting for them. I knew it because I had signed the papers myself just hours before. When the taxi pulled up to the curb in front of the old Victorian house where I had spent my childhood, the brake lights flared red in the gloom of the early evening. My parents stepped out, their shoulders slumped. My mother reached into her purse for her keys, ready to retreat into her sanctuary and pretend the last 48 hours had never happened. She walked up the front steps, her heels clicking on the wood. But as she reached for the door handle, she froze. There was a sticker on the door, a large, bright orange notice that screamed authority. Foreclosure. Property of the bank. No trespassing. I parked behind them and watched as my mother tried to peel the sticker off her fingernails, scratching uselessly at the adhesive. She was frantic. My father stood on the lawn staring up at the dark windows, as if waiting for the house to explain itself. Sophia! My mother screamed when she saw me getting out of the car. She ran down the steps waving her hand at the door. What is this? Why is there a lockbox on the door? Why does my key not work? I walked up the driveway, Liam a silent sentinel beside me. I looked at the house that had been the symbol of their status, the house they had held over my head like a weapon. It seems Brad was busier than you thought, I said calmly. My father looked at me, his face gray. What do you mean? When Liam's team audited Brad's finances, I explained, keeping my voice steady, they found a secondary mortgage on this property, taken out 6 months ago. The bank has the documents. They have your signatures on them. That is a lie, my mother gasped. We never signed anything. We own this house outright. Grandma Rose left it to us. Brad forged them, Liam said, stepping forward. He used this house as collateral for his crypto investments. When the market crashed, he stopped making payments. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings 3 weeks ago. You just did not see the notices because Brad was intercepting your mail. My mother's knees gave out. She sat down hard on the damp grass surrounded by her Louis Vuitton luggage. He sold our house, she whispered. He stole our home. We are homeless. We are destitute. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. This time they were real tears, the tears of a woman who had lost her shield against the world. Sophia, she begged, you have to help us. You are rich now. Liam is a billionaire. You can buy it back. Please, do not let them take it. Where will we go? Where will Grandma Rose go? I looked at the woman who had threatened to put Grandma in a state facility just yesterday. The irony was bitter on my tongue. You are worried about Grandma now, I asked. Yesterday you were ready to sell her out for a vacation. I was wrong, she sobbed. I was scared. Please, Sophia, buy the house. Let us stay. I will be better. I promise. I looked at the house. I looked at the wrap-around porch where I used to read alone, while they threw parties inside. I looked at the attic window where I used to hide. I already bought it, I said. My parents looked up, hope flaring in their eyes. You did? My father asked. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Sophia. I knew you were a good daughter. He started to pick up his bags. All right, let us go inside. I need a drink. This nightmare is finally over. Stop, I said. My father froze. I bought the debt, I said. I paid off the bank this morning. The deed is now in my name. This is my house, not yours. Mine. Well, yes, my mother said, standing up and brushing grass from her skirt. But it stays in the family. That is what matters. Now open the door, dear. It is getting chilly. I did not move. You are not listening, I said. This is my house, and I have new rules for who lives here. What rules? My mother asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. Rule number 1, I said. Grandma Rose stays in the master bedroom. I have hired 2 full-time nurses to care for her. She will never be moved. Of course, my mother said quickly. We love Rose. Rule number 2, I continued. You 2 are no longer the owners. You are guests. And as guests who have proven to be financially irresponsible, you will not be living in the main house. My mother stopped smiling. What? Where are we supposed to sleep? I pointed to the back of the property. There, nestled under the old oak trees, was the carriage house. It was a small converted shed that we used to use for storage. It had 1 room, a tiny bathroom, and a kitchenette. It was drafty, cramped, and needed a coat of paint. The carriage house, I said. It is dry. It is safe. And it is free. That is more than you deserve after what you did. You cannot be serious, my mother screeched. That is a shack. It is for servants. It is for people who have no other options. Liam interjected his voice, leaving no room for argument. Take it or leave it. If you do not want it, I can call a shelter downtown. They might have space. My parents looked at each other. They looked at the warm, lit windows of the main house and then at the dark, cold shed. They realized they had no power. The dynamic had shifted permanently. Defeated, my father picked up the bags and began the long walk to the back of the yard. "What about Jasmine?" my mother asked, turning back. "When she gets out on bail, she cannot live in the shed with us. There is no room." I looked at the gate where a taxi had just dropped off a disheveled figure. It was Jasmine. She had been released on her own recognizance pending trial, stripped of her passport and her dignity. She walked up the driveway looking small and terrified. "Jasmine needs to learn the value of $1, I said. Jasmine approached us. She looked at the orange sticker on the door, then at me. She didn't say a word. She just looked tired. "You need a job, Jasmine," I said. "You have restitution to pay, and you need to pay rent if you want to stay in the carriage house with Mom and Dad." "A job," Jasmine whispered. "I do not have any skills. I have never worked a real day in my life." "I know," I said. "But lucky for you, my husband knows people." Liam reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to Jasmine. It was an employment application. "Aurora Resort and Spa." Jasmine read, her voice trembling. "We have an opening," Liam said with a small smile. "In the housekeeping department. It starts at minimum wage, but the tips can be good if you are fast." Jasmine stared at the paper. The housekeeping department. The very people she had terrorized for days. She would be cleaning the toilets she used to complain about. She would be changing the sheets for guests, like the one she thought she was. I cannot," Jasmine stammered. "You can and you will," I said, "because the alternative is prison." Jasmine looked at the application. She looked at her manicured hands, which were shaking. Then slowly she folded the paper and put it in her pocket. "What time do I start?" she whispered. 6 a.m., Liam said. "Don't be late. The head of housekeeping is very particular about punctuality." I watched them trudge toward the shed, the once mighty family now reduced to the reality they had tried so hard to avoid. I turned to Liam and took his hand. We walked up the steps of my house, my real home, and for the first time in my life, the air felt completely clean. 3 months later, we returned to the Napa Valley vineyard, where everything had fallen apart. The sun was setting in the exact same spot, casting long golden shadows across the rows of grapevines. But this time the air did not feel heavy with expectation or judgment. It felt light. It felt free. There were no Ferraris parked in the driveway, and no flashing cameras trying to capture content for social media. There were only 20 chairs set up on the grass, filled with the people who actually mattered. My colleagues from the library who had brought me soup when I was sick. Liam's old friends from his neighborhood who had known him before he made his first billion. Grandma Rose, who was sitting in the front row in her wheelchair, wrapped in a warm blanket, smiling with a clarity we had not seen in years. I stood at the altar in a simple white dress that moved with the breeze. It was not a designer gown covered in crystals. It was elegant and understated, just like the man standing in front of me. Liam looked at me with eyes that held no secrets anymore. He was not the ghost of Aurora Holdings today. He was just Liam, my husband, the man who had walked through fire to protect me. "Do you, Sophia, take this man?" the pastor asked, his voice warm and genuine. "I do," I whispered. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, entirely enough. As we exchanged rings, I happened to look past Liam's shoulder toward the edge of the property. The vineyard bordered the service road that led to the Aurora Resort, and there was a chain-link fence separating the two worlds. Standing on the other side of that fence was a solitary figure. It was Jasmine. She was wearing the gray housekeeping uniform of the resort. It was ill-fitting and wrinkled at the hem. Her hair, which used to be perfectly blown out, was pulled back in a messy practical bun. She was holding a plastic bag, presumably her dinner for her break. She was watching us. From that distance, I could not see the details of her face, but I could feel her gaze. It wasn't the look of the golden child looking down on the scapegoat anymore. It was the look of someone standing in the cold, watching a fire they had extinguished with their own hands. She stood there for a long minute, watching the sister she had called a failure marry the billionaire she had called a servant. And then slowly she turned away. She walked back toward the service road, her shoulders slumped under the weight of a minimum wage shift and a lifetime of regret. She had traded her family for status, and now she had neither. I squeezed Liam's hand, bringing my attention back to the present. I didn't feel angry at her. I didn't even feel the need to gloat. I just felt a quiet sense of closure. She was part of my past, a lesson I had learned the hard way. But she was not part of my future. Later that evening, as the stars began to appear above the valley, my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen. It was a notification from the correction facility. Collect call from inmate Brad Miller. Accept or decline. I looked at the screen for a heartbeat. I imagined Brad sitting in a cell wearing the orange jumpsuit Liam had promised him, desperately trying to find someone, anyone who would listen to his lies. I imagined him calling my parents in the carriage house only to have them let it ring because they were too tired from painting their own walls to deal with his delusions. I pressed the red button declining the call. Then I blocked the number. I looked up to see Liam watching me, a glass of wine in his hand. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. "Everything is perfect," I said. I stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the land that we now owned. The wind played with my hair, and I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sweet night air. For years they told me I was broken. They called me the black sheep. They called me pathetic because I chose to work in a dusty library instead of chasing money. They mocked me for marrying a man who wore t-shirts and drove a truck. They thought that value was something you wore on your wrist or drove on the highway. But they forgot the most important lesson of all. Real kings do not need to wear crowns every day to know who they are, and real queens do not need to put others down to feel tall. I looked back at the party. My father was laughing with one of Liam's friends. My mother was sitting quietly by Grandma Rose, feeding her a piece of cake. They were humble now. They were learning. It would take time, and I would never fully trust them again, but they were learning that their place at the table was a privilege, not a right. The best revenge is not destroying the people who hurt you. It is not screaming or fighting or stooping to their level. The best revenge is simply being happy. It is succeeding so completely and so beautifully that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. It is building a life so full of love that there is no room left for their hate. Liam walked over and wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Washington?" he murmured. I leaned back into him, closing my eyes. "I am thinking that I love our story," I whispered. "I love it too," Liam said. He spun me around and kissed me under the moonlight, a kiss that promised a lifetime of quiet victories. We danced there on the terrace with no audience but the stars, and it was the richest moment of my life. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was a long journey from that cold hospital floor to this beautiful vineyard, but I wanted to share every part of it with you. If you have ever felt underestimated by your family, or if you are currently fighting to find your voice in a toxic environment, please know that you are not alone. Your worth is not defined by how they treat you. It is defined by how you treat yourself. Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family members to find your own peace? Or have you ever discovered that the people you thought were weak were actually the strongest ones in the room? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed this story and subscribe to the channel for more tales of justice, resilience, and the sweet taste of karma. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that sometimes the underdog wins in the end. Until next time, remember to keep your head high and your circle small.